Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. The door burst open with a powerful kick. Tyrion looked up from his notes on Peter Baelish and the crown's finances to see Jaime carrying a frail, thin figure in a monk's coarse plain robes before placing the man down on the wooden table, shoving aside parchment, quills, and unlit candles. A small pot smashed on the stone floor, the hinged silver top leaking black ink. Tyrion, I need your help. Clearly. Wait, is that Lancel? Yaxley nodded. He's very sick. The man was all skin and bones, and the skin was hot to the touch. Tyrion examined the red spots and swollen black bumps on the neck, arms, and chest. He had read about such marks before in scrolls, and what little he knew was quite alarming. I am a dwarf, not a healer. Why did you bring him here? Here was Tyrion's personal quarters at the Red Keep. I asked for a maester. There were none at the Sept of Baelor. The Septons and Septas were absolutely useless. All they did was pray to the father and mother for mercy. That's what Septons and Septas do. They pray. A few might be able to set bones, bind wounds, or even deliver a child, but their work is to save souls, not lives. In Westeros, the arts of healing are taught by the Citadel. He needs more than words. He is burning up. Jaime, we are not at Old Town. Masters are assigned to castles. There is only one castle in King's Landing, and Pycelle was strangled to death there. There is only one maester in the entirety of King's Landing? Jaime asked, aghast. No, but a maester would have to abandon his seat to accompany their lord, and a few great houses with an old maester might have a younger replacement to train. They study for years to forge links and attain their position, so they are loath to abandon their castles. There are those who are disciples and acolytes, or even nobles who have dabbled in learning. Father has some in charge of his ravens, but whether they know the arts of healing sufficiently to help Lancel is another matter. Can you help him? I have read books on medicine, but I doubt that is enough. Tyrion put the parchment, quills, and ledgers away. He is our cousin. We can't let him die despite what he has done. What Lancel has done? You mean, sleep with our sweet sister? He poisoned the king, and he slept with Cersei as a reward. Jaime said bitterly. No one can prove that. He gave Robert Baratheon strong wine to drink during a boar hunt. Many squires carry food and drink for their knights and lords. Lancel told the High Septon. He confessed his sins. Then we're fucked, Tyrion said before perking up. Well, it might not matter. Podrick. His squire came in, awaiting orders. Pod stared down on the ground, not daring to meet the eyes of either Lannister brother. Buy as much king's copper, milk of the poppy, and dream wine you can. All the healing herbs you can find from the apothecary near the castle. Jaime waited to speak until the shy boy left. What did you mean by that? Tyrion filled 2 goblets of wine and guzzled the first down. Fortified, he raised Lancel's left arm. A swollen lump about the size of a small egg was revealed in the armpit under the stained shirt. This was seen last in King's Landing 90 years ago. The Great Spring Sickness. It lasted over a year, killed 4 out of 10 in the capital. I didn't know. I shouldn't have brought him to the Red Keep. Jaime realized. No, you shouldn't, but it might not matter. The spring sickness killed King Darion the Good, and both his heirs. I am sure the Targaryens tried and failed to prevent the disease from entering the Red Keep. The best we can do is to give him food and drink, keep him warm, and bath him in cool water when his fever burns. The herbs may help. What happened at the Great Sept after Lancel fell ill? Tyrion started on the second goblet. A few brothers tried to help, but most refused to come close when they saw the bumps on Lancel's skin. Many sparrows fled out the doors to the plaza, and as for the High Septon, he was nowhere to be seen. He may have retreated back to one of the crystal towers or the vaults in the catacombs. I do not know. They were all afraid. The Septons, the Septas, the Sparrows, the Begging Brothers, even the Knights. They have every right to be, but running will only spread the disease further, and hiding in a crowded sept will not save them. Prayers did not help in the past. We are going to be blamed for this. The faith in the small folk will say it was the Lannisters conspiring with the Freys that bought the plague. Jaime realized. Yes, Tyrion nodded, as he reached for the bottle. But they will blame Joffrey and Lord Tywin first and foremost. Lords and small folk do not rebel when they are busy dying. Strong, sturdy hands brush the scalp, weaving the double-sided ivory comb through thick, curly brown locks. Margaery had many servants and maids, but only her handmaidens attended her hair. This was the one she trusted the most with her grooming and attire. Margaery dearly loved Eleanor, was fond of Maega and doted on Alla like a sister, but this lady could keep secrets. "Mira, are you happy here?" The handmaiden stopped in surprise, but then resumed combing. "Of course, your grace. Not everyone can say they serve a queen." Margaery was not queen yet, for that she would need to wed Joffrey. She pushed further. "But do you miss the north? Highgarden is so lovely, your grace. Ironrath is smaller and far more rustic, more a ringfort and earthen palisade than a great keep. But I miss my family and the Wolfswood. My mother always said that the wolves that roam the woods only attack enemies of the Starks. Is your house close to the Starks?" Mira's dark eyes turned wary at the question. That was good, Margaery thought. Better a cautious servant than a fool. Ironrath is close to Winterfell, but House Forrester is a minor house, sworn to the Glovers of Deepwood Made, but my father, Lord Gregor, was proud to be friends with Ned Stark. Two of my brothers, Roderick and Ethan, fought for Lord Robb in the Riverlands. Before the trouble with the Reach, they sent me ravens talking about their adventures in the war. Ethan boasted that they had brought Jaime Lannister down from his horse at the Whispering Woods, and Roderick claimed that Jon Snow entrusted them with an important task. Do you believe them? The dark-haired girl laughed. Northmen like to brag, like all men. I think they did well in the fighting. Father trained Roderick for battle from a young age. But I don't know about any task. They would certainly not share the details in a letter, and after the Battle of the God's Eye, I have only received one raven, saying they were all safe. After the taking of the twins, Mira, I have a task for you. I need you to bring a message to the Starks, and assure Robb Stark and Jon Snow that the Tyrells are not their enemies. But the Tyrells are their enemies. You fought them at the God's Eye. Mira might have spent 3 years in the South, but she still retained the accent and the famous bluntness of the North. I did not. I wanted peace between the Reach and the North. Pardon me, Lady Margaery. You will become queen to Joffrey Baratheon soon. The North will never forget that he chopped off Ned Stark's head. Joffrey had Lady Sansa beaten at court for her brother's victories, and tried to kill Lady Arya and her wolf in the Riverlands. Sending a raven or a letter with me to Winterfell would be pointless. Even my family would accuse me of having mixed loyalties or being a spy for the South. This is the truth, Mira. I want the Starks on my side, not Joffrey's. I do not trust him either. When the Starks come south again, I want them to know they have an ally in me. Mira put away the comb and the unguents. She began to work on the braids. Your Grace, words are wind in the north. The Forresters are a minor house. Father became a squire only because he beat a Glover in arm wrestling. But Ned Stark called Lord Gregor a friend because they fought together at Pike. My brothers bled for Winterfell, and that's why they are honored by Robb Stark and Jon Snow. That is why the North follows the wolves. The Starks believe allies become friends on the battlefield. Margaery's head throbbed in annoyance. Surely, there were ways to forge alliances besides fighting in battles. In the South, there were marriages, feasts, balls, fostering, and serving as pages or squires. In the North, it seemed that all the men liked to do was beat each other over the head with pointy sticks. Wait, Mira, you said 2 of your brothers served Lord Robb in the Riverlands, but you told me once that you had 3 brothers. Mira turned red. I have 4 brothers, but Ryan was a babe when I left Ironrath. My second oldest brother, Asher, he is the best fighter of my family. Asher was always wild, a good brother, but a bad son. He fell in love with a White Hill, and bloodshed ensued. My father exiled him to Essos. And what does he do there? A sellsword. The Company of the Rose. What is the Company of the Rose? Why have I not heard of it? Margaery's interest was piqued. She trusted roses, not lions or stags. Not the gold rose of Highgarden. The blue rose of Winterfell. Men and women of the North who chose exile over bending the knee to the dragons. Legends say they were founded by Brandon Snow, Torrhen Stark's half-brother. And how do they feel about the Starks? Always loyal. Those are their words. Even though they have been in Essos for generations, northern blood flows through their veins. My brother says they long to return home. Margaery made up her mind. I want you to find your brother, Asher. I want to hire the services of the Company of the Rose. They won't fight for you against the Starks, the girl warned. I won't ask them to do any such thing. I want them to fight for the North so that Jon Snow and Robb Stark know that I am their friend, not their enemy. This is a very delicate mission. No one can know. You must use your very best judgment. Mira Forrester nodded. Yes, my queen. The Company of the Rose winters in Braavos. I will take a galley from the docks as soon as I can. Her city was suffering. The Queen's Guard and her advisors tried their best to keep the news from her, but Daenerys knew, even high up in the Great Pyramid, she could see. The custom of the Giscari was to bury their dead in tombs of brick and stone, placed in a wooden coffin. The crypts had stairways, arches, and vaults so that those who passed could enjoy the afterlife with their servants and slaves. The great families had funeral rites and games, and then were buried in the Temple of the Graces, a huge flat structure with golden domes. The dead were now burned to stop the spreading of the plague. At night, Meereen glowed with the red and orange of funeral pyres. The Giscari priestesses were angry, but that could not be helped. Daenerys had not freed slaves to please the Green Graces or any of their disciples. Against the counsel of many, she brought small folk into the lower levels of the Great Pyramid. There, the few healers and wise men not beholden to the priestesses helped who they could. She had an odd stroke of luck, Meereen. Like most of Slavers Bay, was always warm. In the past week, a heat wave had settled and the city baked, the sun scorching at noon so that the people slept during the day and only rarely went out at night. A slave who had studied at the House of the Red Hands told her that such dry heat would slow down the plague, for it was too hot for the fleas and rats that spread disease. When she heard that, Daenerys had bought litters of cats to roam through the Great Pyramid. But none of this stopped the epidemic. When the rains returned and the city cooled, the plague would burst out of control, like a raging fire ready to devour the lives of everyone, rich or poor, slaves or masters. Farming and trade had been disrupted, so soon Meereen would struggle to feed its people. A frowning Daenerys stepped down to the audience chamber to speak once more with the Graces and merchants. Khaleesi, you should smile more. Tell these old women to die in their own pyramids. Jilgo quipped to the chuckles of Aggo and Rakahar, her two other blood riders. They blame me for bringing the plague. Blood of my blood. What is there to blame? In cities, men get sick. This is known. The Dothraki have only one city, close to the Mother of Mountains, and for much of the year it is empty, save for children and old women. Let us ride to the great grass sea where we would be free of this plague, Aggo said. She was sorely tempted by Aggo's words. If she had only Dothraki followers, Daenerys might have done so. Her dragons and Khalasar did not need a pyramid, but she also had Unsullied, craftsmen, farmers, scribes, eunuchs, and young boys and girls, trained as pillow slaves. They needed towns and cities to live. She would not abandon them to their fate. The hall was full with priestesses and nobles, the elite of Meereen. The Shabbat glowered at Hisdar Zo, Lorik, the appointed spokesperson of the great families. Hisdar wore a dark green tokar that hung over one shoulder, revealing a weak, soft chest and two flaccid nipples. His thick necklace, jade, rubies, and gold matched his earnings and the fringes of the tokar. My munificence! We have come to ask that the fighting pits be reopened. The great pit of Daznak, the pit of Graz, the golden pit. These have remained empty since you have come to Meereen. The pits will draw trade and fill the coffers with coins from the ends of the world. No arena in the world is better known than the fighting pits of Meereen. You have asked this before. I may consider opening the pits in the future, but my first concern must be the plague. Daenerys answered. The Green Grace's bitter words were delivered with a voice of honey and oil. The plague has come because you have failed to honor the customs of Myr. Fighting in the pits is more than bread and circuses. The ancient art of pit fighting is a blood sacrifice, a display of courage, strength, and skill pleasing to the gods themselves. Bring it back, or else the city will suffer. If the contest were just gladiators versus gladiators, I would consider it, but the crowd loves blood. There are also battles of slave children with daggers against beasts. There are pits with dwarves, cripples, the old and weak. Many more children died than trained fighters last year, Daenerys said. You would deny Meereen our past? The gods of Gits have sent the plague to Meereen for your pride. The Green Grace declared. That cannot be. A dusky-skinned girl replied. The plague has struck Yunkai, Astapor, and Volantis. The sailors also claim that Lace, Myr, Pentos, and Tyros have also been hit by illness. Those last 4 cities have no fighting pits. Do not speak to your betters, girl, the priestess hissed. Missandei will speak to whoever she likes, and you are not her better, Daenerys snarled back. She is right. A plague has come to Essos. I did not bring it, but you cannot cure it either. It will come back again and again. The dragons, the Dothraki Khalasar, the army of Unsullied, they can do nothing. You will watch as your people die. What will you do when the bodies of the slaves cover all of Meereen? The Green Grace said. You presume too much. The speaker was garbed in a long black hooded robe. Her eyes could be seen behind a dark red lacquered wood mask, and Daenerys remembered those eyes shined with a strange light incoursed. Who are you? Some red priestess from Volantis? The Green Grace sneered. Daenerys knew the woman, Quaithe. I met you with a merchant prince, and a warlock. I killed one, and burnt the other. Why are you here? I have a gift for you, Mother of Dragons. Kiva held something small in dark hooded hands. The gifts of witches are poisoned, Ser Jorah said. Khaleesi, better a man drop his Iraq or flee from his horse than trust in the promises of magic. Rakora, the most senior blood rider, said, I am not a witch. I am a shadowbinder, and this gift will save your people if you let it. The masked woman held high the stub of an obsidian candle, the dark glass half burnt, and the magic sang out to Daenerys Targaryen. Lancel Lannister died 6 days later in a small dusty chamber in the now empty maiden vault. Podrick Payne poured a trickle of milk of the poppy down the copper funnel, inserted between Lancel's lips. The breathing turned from gasps for air to steady relief, and then faded entirely. Tyrion and Jaime stayed at the doorway. They were the only Lannisters who visited as their cousin lay dying. Cersei and Lord Tywin never came. Uncle Kevin saw his son once, in the very beginning, and then retreated, afraid of catching the plague. Martin and Willem, Lancel's twin brothers, also stayed away. Whether that was on the suggestion of their father Kevin or their own fear, Tyrion did not know. The Faith abandoned Lancel in his hour of need. Despite Tyrion's best efforts, no Septon came to administer last rites and pray for mercy and the sanctity of the soul. So many bodies were delivered to the Septs every day that there was not enough consecrated ground to give burial. Much of that ground would be taken by the holy brothers and silent sisters who had fallen ill. Quite a few of the most devout had attempted to leave the city and were caught and delivered back to the High Sparrow. Tyrion had no doubt that these fat and corrupt priests would receive the fate they so dearly hoped to avoid, being forced to dig trenches and handle rotting corpses. King's Landing had turned mostly quiet. Men and women avoided each other, and servants only went out to buy food and drink. Some alehouses and wine sinks did brisk business as a few fellows, lusty and foolish, believed that the cure to the plague was to drink and make merry. Those celebrations ended abruptly when they discovered a plague bearer in their midst. The sick were abandoned by neighbors, family and friends. Often, servants stole what they could before fleeing their former masters. Many who died in their homes were revealed only by the smell of decaying bodies. And this was still early, Tyrion thought bleakly. Life would get worse. Uncle Jaime, Uncle Tyrion. The brothers turned to see a young blonde-haired boy, holding a crimson handkerchief that covered the plump face up to the green eyes. Jaime spoke first. Tommen, what are you doing here? Your mother will be angry. I wanted to see Sir Lancel, to bid him goodbye. Has he? Lancel is gone. He is with the father and mother above in the 7 heavens. Jaime and I will stand vigil. Oh, Tommen gulped. May I say a prayer for him? Tyrion nodded, and Jaime warned the boy not to approach too closely. Father above, judge Lancel justly, Tommen frowned. I have no crystal to place on his grave. Even the Sept of Baelor will run out of crystals for the dead, although the Faith will need less crystals for Septons going forward, he quipped, thinking of the most devout. Tyrion, there is no point of frightening him, Tommen. The plague will pass. Yes, but not before disease kills many, many people. There is no point of lying to Tommen. The royal family only left the Red Keep rarely, and then with a large contingent of guardsmen, but the suffering in King's Landing was too great to be hidden. I heard Joffrey talking to grandfather. He demanded to know why we haven't left the city. That would be a terrible idea, Jaime said. Joffrey would be forever known as the king who ran, and if we left King's Landing, the other nobles would vanish too. Tyrion thought the second was his father's main concern. If the Tyrells returned to Highgarden, Lady Margaery might never come back. Without that alliance, and with the Iron Throne strapped for gold, Joffrey's reign would be short indeed. Tyrion wouldn't care, but he had no desire to lose his head in the aftermath. I am frightened, Uncle Jaime. Joffrey says the plague will come for me. Tommen squeaked. His Grace has a wonderful way with words. Tyrion patted his nephew's hand. Her fear is understandable. Courage is not boasting about strength. It is enduring the hard things of life. You are stronger than you think, Tommen, Jaime said, and you will survive. Tyrion hoped that he and Jaime had not just spoken some empty words. A meeting had been called a few days after Lancel's death. Joffrey had summoned all those with any skill at healing to the Great Hall. There were more maesters in the city than Tyrion had initially suspected. Many served the Reach Lords, like Balabar and Lomas for the Red Winds and the Tyrells. Others were from nearby holdfasts and castles in the Crownlands. There were also acolytes and disciples among the crowd, and some of these were quite young. Tyrion sat with the other members of the small council. Uncle Cavan's stoic face betrayed no grief over his son's recent death. Mace's eyes fluttered around, watching his family with concern, even though they were protected by Tyrell guardsmen. Prince Oberyn gazed intently at the speaker, a large, fat, and old man who bore a strong resemblance to Lord Mace. Your Grace, I can explain why this epidemic has afflicted King's Landing. I forged my silver link many decades ago and have studied with the finest masters in the Citadel. The plague has arisen from miasma, Gorman Tyrell announced in triumph. What? Joffrey shouted. His nephew seemed to believe that yelling was akin to wisdom. Miasma, my king, a noxious form of bad air, poisonous vapors that come from rotting things, fetid swamplands, tainted bodies, and all sorts of foul odors. Idiot, Oberyn snorted. But then what can you expect from most Tyrells? The Dornishman kept his voice low, so only Tyrion overheard his comment. Did the Northmen bring this miasma to King's Landing? We know that Jon Snow is a master of the dark arts and controls wolves, ravens, and all sorts of beasts. He could have cursed us. Gorman replied to Joffrey's rant. No ships have sailed from White Harbor to King's Landing in many moons. If disease is caused by miasma, how could the Northmen be responsible? Tyrion asked. Every plague in history has begun in Essos. That is why the Great Spring Sickness and the Shivers began in the eastern cities before reaching further west. The only exception was the Grey Plague, but that was a galley that traveled from Pentos directly to Old Town without docking at King's Landing or Planky Town. A slender, brown-skinned boy said. Snow could have used dark sorcery to cast a spell from afar. Joffrey argued. If Jon Snow could cast a spell, he would have done so during the war. Not half a year later, a plague would have been far worse then, Tywin said, much to the king's anger. If you are right, Master, that sickness comes from miasma, then what can we do about this? Sir Kevin asked. We need to cleanse and scour the air. This miasma, with its foul odors and deadly mists, must be driven away. If King's Landing is clean and pure, the Queen of Thorns interrupted. King's Landing is a shithole. There is not enough rose water and lavender in all of the Reach to make the city smell better. Perhaps not the city, but the Red Keep and the dwellings of... Gorman was again interrupted. But that cannot be right, Master. What is your name? Lord Tywin asked, peering down at the brown-haired man with a pug nose and wide face. The young man wore red apples on his sleeve. Owen Fossaway of Cider Hall. There is no proof of this miasma. Nothing explains why air would spread disease. Archmeister Ibros believes it must be something else. Grimoire snorted. But Ibros has no idea what that is. No, Urzo requires evidence, and not just unproven theories. If miasma was the true cause of disease, then disease should not spread if there was no odor. But would any man, even one who had bathed in rose water, touch the open sore of a plague-bearer without gloves? Blood and pus will carry the disease along. The smell in the air would not matter. The old maester stammered back a long-winded, hard-to-follow explanation, but Tyrion thought the young Fossaway made a great deal of sense. Cleaning the air would not matter when there were more and more dead and unburied bodies every day, he shuddered. thinking of the thousands of small folk clustered around the Sept of Baelor. "Enough of this claptrap about miasma. Where else has the plague appeared?" Joffrey yelled. "The port of Duskendale is closed. A trading galley from Tyros was burnt at the harbor and the captain and oarsmen killed for fear they brought the plague. There are also outbreaks reported in Sisterton and the Stepstones." Sir Kevin said crisply, "The plague has come to Old Town. All sailors must stay and lodge in sight of the Whispering Sound. The Starry Sept, the High Tower, and the Citadel are sealed off," Mate said. "Lannisport has been hit badly. Thousands have died already," Tywin said. Tyrion shook his head. "That raven was several days old. The toll would be rising. Planky Town, as well. Our castellan believes that it was a Bravazzi cog that first carried the plague to Dorne," Oberyn said. "What about the north and the Riverlands?" Joffrey demanded. "The rivermen have stopped any travelers from using the King's Road, and we have little knowledge of what is happening at White Harbor. If there is an outbreak, then the captains have not spoken much about it," Kevin said. "We should take a ship, fill it with the sick and dying, and send it to White Harbor. Let the Starks deal with the plague. Better yet, land several galleys on the northern shores." Joffrey gave a sharp, nasty laugh. "And what captain would sail such a ship? Men die from the plague in a few days. The ship might crash at the Gullet, or even be wrecked in the Crown Lands," Tyrion said. The king sneered like a child denied a toy. "You have mentioned several ports, but not Gulltown. Has the Vale seen the plague?" Sir Kevin exchanged a quick glance with Lord Tywin before speaking. "An odd letter has come from the Vale, one that is frankly hard to believe. Lord Baelus writes that he has discovered a way of defeating the plague." "What? Is that possible?" Cersei said. "Who is this Baelish? Is he a healer?" Gorman asked. "A coin counter and a whoremonger," Olenna Tyrell said. "Then how could such a man cure the plague?" the befuddled old maester asked. "Baelish claims that Gulltown is completely free of disease. He says that learned men from Essos have imparted secrets to treating disease." Kevin added reluctantly, "There are no such secrets. The plague began in Essos. Ships from the free cities carried the disease to Planky Town and likely King's Landing." The slender, dark-skinned man said, "The Essos here are skilled at many things, but our maesters match their healers." "Allers is right. There have been far more outbreaks in the free cities than Westeros," Owen Fossaway said. Joffrey clapped his hands. "Enough. Tell Baelish to come to King's Landing. I command him to cure the plague in the name of the Iron Throne." Tyrion, like others in the small council, doubted these claims, but the king's orders carried the day. He wondered, not for the first time, what game Littlefinger was playing. The old knight placed the breastplate carefully next to the vambraces and pauldrons in the sea chest. That morning, the plate armor had been lowered into a barrel of dry sand and then polished and oiled carefully, checking for any signs of rust and brushing the steel to make certain there was no sand, tears, or rips in the leather straps and metal rivets. A dozen freedmen would have volunteered for the task, but Sir Barristan Sulmy had always cleaned his own armor, shield, and arms. The steel shield, sword, and dagger had already been put into the chest, wrapped up in wool and linen to keep them dry at sea. Sir Barristan wore a thick, brown cloak, hooded to cover his white hair. He carried a stout oak quarterstaff, shod with steel at both ends. The staff was deadly in his hands, although he looked to all the world like an old man. The brown cloak hid a thin mail hauberk that reached to the thighs and sleeves. A talented smith, freed from slavery in Estopper, crafted the chain shirt, and the quality of the work equaled any master armorer on the Street of Steel. "Sir Barristan, do you need any more gold for the journey?" He looked up to see the young scribe with golden eyes and long black hair. "No, my lady. A knight in exile does not need much coin." "Cersei, Myrcella is not banishing you from her court. She is sending you on a mission. The others of the Queen's Guard cannot go to Westeros. Only you have the hope of saving Meereen from the plague. I am a simple knight, Missandei. I am still not certain what her grace expects me to do. She says to go to a certain place, but why? What for?" The girl clasped her hands and thought, "This one does not know, but the Queen," she took the candle from the witch, "and the Queen knows." "And are you certain it was a Valyrian candle?" Doubt could be heard in the dutiful voice. The girl nodded. "A glass candle. Once at the mansion of a good master of Astapor, I saw a picture of a dragon candle in a book on the wars between ancient Ys and Valyria. The queen lit the candle and it gave a strange light, so that everything in the room became brighter and darker. The white was sharper. The yellow shone like gold. The red turned into flames. And the shadows were blacker than night. There was magic. There, dragon magic. Fire and blood. But you do not know what she saw? This one is not a dragon. The queen is, and whatever she saw in the burning candle caused her to summon you. This one hears others speak of your great feats. You have won melees, defeated villains, rescued prisoners, fought many battles. Surely you will succeed at this quest. He thought of his years of service to the crown. He had served 3 kings, 2 Targaryens, and 1 Baratheon. He would have served that vile boy too, had Joffrey not cast him aside. The stories leave a great deal out. I failed in my duty. When I was named to the King's Guard by the White Bull, I pledged to protect the royal family. The Targaryens all died. Yak for Ace. Rak for E. Rak for E. His wife and sweet children. I could do nothing to save them. The royal family is not dead. Daenerys Targaryen is a dragon, and you can serve her best by completing this mission, Missandei said. Yes, but am I serving her? Who knows? Whatever she saw in the glass candle is true. I have known many Targaryens. Their visions have led them astray. Aegon the Unlikely knighted me, and he died trying to hatch dragons. Yuxi anxious forced Aegon and Raquel to marry because of a prophecy about the prince who was promised. Aegon went mad, and Raquel, he was the best of them all, but he believed in his dreams and visions. He was born in grief at Summerhall, and the shadow hung over him all his life. Sir, I do not know whether the vision is a true one, but I know this. There was magic in ancient Valyria. Daenerys Targaryen has true magic, else she would not give birth to 3 dragons in the Red Waste. And she saved me. She saved all of us. Without her, we would still be slaves, and the best fate I could hope for is to be raped by only a few masters when I flowered. I believe in the Queen. If she sees something in the flames, then there must be a chance. Please, Sir Barristan. Not all magic is false. Barristan nodded. The little girl was far wiser than her years. Daenerys Targaryen was by no means a perfect leader, but then he had served men like Robert Baratheon and Daenerys the Mad. The 7 Kingdoms would be far better had Barristan failed in his rescue of Aerys from Duskendale. Then Prince Rhaegar would have been king and might have married Lady Cersei. There would have been no rebellion, but it was not worth the grief to dream about what might have been. He would do his duty for Rhaegar's sister to honor the memory of the last dragon. Of course, but watch over the Queen when I am gone. She requires your good counsel. But Misa has many advisors. Many terrible advisors, including myself. We serve the Queen for the honors and rewards she can bestow. You serve because you truly believe, Barristan said. He trusted Missandei over all the others. Even at 11, she was smart and sensible. Her loyalty was beyond question. He marveled how a slave girl could be more perceptive than the scions of these great families. You will come back, sire? The girl asked. I promise, as soon as I can. He waved goodbye as he boarded the Sea Shrike for Westeros. The Merlin King was due at the docks this afternoon. Word had spread around King's Landing that Baelish had discovered a clever way of beating the plague. The city was on tenterhooks. As nobles, the faith in the small folk awaited Littlefinger's arrival. Tyrion suspected that Joffrey had divulged the news to his courtiers and lackeys as a way to distract the populace. Men and women were easily deceived because they were too quick to hope. Tyrion spent much of the past week speaking with maesters and septons. Quite frankly, he was surprised at their bravery. The Lannisters had to stay in King's Landing because to flee would bring shame to the Iron Throne. A few corrupt priests had tried to run, but most with real skills at healing chose to remain and fight. Tyrion was certain that the maesters knew the toll would be high among their numbers. Courage, he realized, extended beyond the battlefield. Wisdom did not. Tyrion had heard of many bizarre and strange treatments, designed to balance the 4 humors. A few were within the bounds of reason, drinking vinegar or airing the house with herbs or a warm fire, but rubbing onions, herbs, and a chopped snake or pigeon over the boils made little sense. Some quacks even argued for bathing in or drinking urine. Tyrion had slept in his piss many times when he was drunk. It had not made him feel better. A few of the most learned, particularly those who had studied healing in Essos, talked of certain medicine that could suspend sickness. Tyrion did not understand it fully, but a disease could be stalled by slowing down the blood. A treatment, a concoction of powders, venom, and rare buds, was frightfully expensive, far more than the already costly herbs, lavender and rosewater sold at stalls and stores all over King's Landing. The problem was that the blood cloak serum only delayed the inevitable. It stopped the growth of the boils, but the swelling and redness in the armpits, neck, and groin remained. When the medicine ran out, patients would die as the pockets of pus exploded in size. Still, Tyrion tried to buy what little he could find. For once, the capital did not smell terribly. That had nothing to do with Joffrey or efforts by the Watch and the Faith to remove the rotting bodies. An autumn storm had blown in from Blackwater Bay, and heavy rain washed away the stink and smoke. Fewer people had died during the days of the storm. Tyrion wondered if the fat Tyrell Master had been right about the miasma. If he was, the plague was bound to return in greater force. The rains eroded the shallow trenches dug outside the walls and near the river in the past weeks, exposing a multitude of rotting corpses. The dead did not stay buried in King's Landing. My lord, the great Sept of Baelor. What is it, Pod? Riots. Angry protests against the Iron Throne. Demands that the royal court pray and fast to ward off the plague. Not that Joffrey would ever do such a thing. Fasting would not be good for his temperament, Tyrion said. The Septons and the small folk are more likely to blame you and your father before Joffrey. They hate the Lannisters first. And some still believe that Joffrey is a Baratheon, Bronn said. Some people are fools. Even when the truth hits them right between the eyes, they cling to fantasies. The dissatisfaction with life in King's Landing was driven by the plague and not by Lannister rule. Tyrion's role as Master of Coin came at a very bad time. Trade had essentially stopped, and goods were more expensive than ever. Plus, dragons and stags were spent on healing herbs in short supply. There was not much anyone could do. The High Septon declared the plague a punishment sent by the gods for our sins. He says that penance must be done to appease the Father, Podrick reported. Penance? What penance? Isn't suffering through this nightmare bad enough? The High Septon called for all godly men to come to the Holy Square, to beg forgiveness before the statue of Baelor, sing hymns to the Father above, and whip each other to atone for their sins. I saw the scourges, my lord, frightful things with 3 tails and barbed with metal. And they are whipping each other? Tyrion asked in dismay. How many? 300 came through this morning at the Lion Gate. An ugly lot, only wearing rags that cover their legs to the ankles. They keep their chests and backs bare, so people can see their naked and bleeding bodies, Bronn said casually. The Lion Gate was only one of 7, and if Bronn saw a few hundred men, other packs of these zealots might enter the city from other gates. Plus, the thousands of sparrows had never left. They are all heading to the Great Sept. Yes, my lord. Large packs from many directions. Most come from the west so they can walk along God's way to the scepter. Podrick said, after Jaime's discovery of Lancel's illness, the Sept of Baelor had been relatively empty, with the sparrows fleeing to Flea Bottom and the wharves. Now it seemed they might return, and these flagellants would join them. Wait, where will they shit? What do you mean, my lord? Pod asked. The High Sparrow has called for men to join him at the plaza near the Great Sept. Well, that is going to be thousands and thousands. Where will they shit? In the gardens, I suppose. Like men always do, Bronn said. Tyrion smacked his hands against his forehead. A horde of sweaty and half-naked men shitting and peeing while they whip each other bloody, in the middle of a plague, at the center of King's Landing. What a fucking mess. Bronn grimaced at the image. It is going to smell very bad, and that... Tyrion made his way under heavy escort to the docks. Their path would stay close to River Row, away as much as possible from the foul odors of the Great Sept. Joffrey, ringed by a large mass of soldiers, traveled in a wheelhouse, although Tywin, Jaime, and the other White Cloaks rode on horses. Tyrion had a few guards of his own, directed by Bronn. For once, his thoughts were not on the plague. An envoy from Braavos had arrived in King's Landing. Noah Gemitis demanded answers that Tyrion did not have. Baelish had pledged certain customs and duties as security for the loans to the Iron Bank. At least 2 pertained to the North and White Harbor. Only the gods knew what else Littlefinger promised to secure more gold. A black mare with a mane and tail of fire trotted next to his side, the master of coin. "Are you collecting many dwarfs' pennies these days?" Oberyn Martell asked. The plague had ruined business at the brothels. Not many whores or whoremongers wanted to fuck if it meant their deaths. Not many pennies or stags or dragons. The 77 dishes at King Joffrey's wedding will be lacking saffron and gold dust. And when will the happy event occur? It has been too long since an exciting wedding feast at King's Landing. The crowd still loved the tales of your nuptials. I had no wedding feast. If you remember, I was interrupted before I could make my vows. I suppose that is a good thing. Jon Snow is no septon, so my marriage would have been invalid, and my banquet would have been a poor one with the Tower of the Hand burnt down. "Do you regret not marrying Lady Sansa?" Oberyn asked. "Gods, no. The girl had only 14 name days. I am twice her age." His son was nearly as old as Sansa, but Tyrion had only seen the boy once, from afar, at River Run. That meant Tasha must have been nearby when he was captured by the Starks in the attempt to free Jaime. "You have not answered the question on the wedding. When will we have a new queen? And will Her Grace, Queen Margaery, preside in court over Queen Cersei?" The Lannisters intended for the wedding to be on the first day of the new year, but the dispute with Sir Baelor and the other Reach Lords had soured Joffrey to the idea. And then when the king stopped sulking, the Tyrells needed time to bring their bannermen back to the city. And now, the plague came to Westeros. Tyrion wondered if Joffrey's wedding was cursed. When the outbreak is over, the wedding will proceed. How are things in Dorne? Are the Martells once again unaffected? The prince frowned slightly, not as well as expected. That was odd. The Dornish had managed to avoid every single epidemic by simply closing the access roads and ports to all travelers. Before Tyrion could probe further, they passed the Mudgate. On the walls, small folk and merchants were lined up, pointing eagerly at the ship that had just docked at the wharf. The Merling King had arrived in King's Landing. A smiling Baelish waved to the crowd. But he wasn't alone. There were dozens and dozens of sinister figures on deck, dressed in long black waxen coats that covered the bodies from head to toe, and wide-brimmed black hats. It was the mask, though, that stood out in the bizarre costume. The mask was the face of a white bird with goggles and a protruding beak half a foot long with holes for 2 nostrils at the end. The beaked masks made the faces appear like ravens or predatory birds ready to feast. The bone white of the mask was a startling contrast to the black clothes. Heavy, dark gloves, thick boots, leather breeches, and a 3-foot cane completed the outlandish ensemble. An odd, cloying, sweet smell of spices and dried flowers came from the ship. "Plague doctors," Oberyn said. "Baelish has brought plague doctors to King's Landing." "Lord Baxley, your report. Who are these men?" Tywin said. The men in question were silent in their eerie, bird-like costumes. During the ride back to the Red Keep, as gold cloaks and royal guards kept the throngs of curious bystanders at bay, Tyrion had taken the opportunity to examine Littlefinger's so-called doctors further. They were a grim bunch, not speaking a word as they marched behind a cheerful Baelish. A distinct cloying smell filled the air, more complex than the belt of garlic looped around their waist. In their heavy waxed leather overcoats, and carrying a long wooden cane, they looked more like soldiers than healers. Of course, the freakish white beaks attracted the most attention. Tyrion could not tell whether the masks looked more raven or crow. Both were birds that feasted on the dead. Baelish bowed deeply to Joffrey, fidgeting on his wooden throne. "Your Grace, there were reports of outbreaks in Pentos and Myr before the disease arrived in King's Landing. I sealed off the harbor area with guards so merchants and sailors were allowed to visit only 1/4 of Gulltown. I consulted learned men, and they advised me to summon well-trained physicians from Braavos. Maester Coleman of the Eyrie told me that the plague arises from miasma, and thus, the plague doctor..." Baelish motioned a man to step forward and pointed to the white mask of leather and cloth that covered the entire face. "The beak is full of aromatic oils and substances to ward off the evil smells of the plague. Lavender, peppermint, dried flowers, vinegar, cinnamon, myrrh, and labdanum. The herbs will purify the noxious air before the doctor can breathe any miasma." Baelish moved his right arm in a flourish to show the entire outfit. The black hat signifies that these are doctors that can deal with the plague. The coat is heavy and scented with wax and animal fat. Every part of the body is protected from dangerous odors with hood, goggles, breeches, boots, and gloves. And the cane? Kevin asked. The cane allows the doctor to diagnose maladies and point out areas needing attention without touching. Clothes can be removed, swollen areas lanced, boils prodded and poked, and instructions given to the servants. All this can be done while the doctor stays 3 feet away from the sick, Baelish replied. The cane would also be used to beat down aggressive and desperate men. Tyrion realized there is a sharp end to the point, and the top was shod with iron. The stick could stab or club a sick patient to death easily. Tyrion decided that he would have guards when meeting any of Littlefinger's freakish minions. Baelish opened one of the leather satchels, revealing the contents to the hall. Colored jars could be seen stuffed into the bag, ranging in size from small snuff bottles to large flasks of amber liquid, sitting on tops of tongs, knives, and irons. There were packs of herbs, sealed urns that held powders, and a small iron thurible for burning incense and oils. It was a strange kit, unlikely any Tyrion had seen for a healer. Behold, various elixirs and remedies for the plague, Baelish announced. And do they work? Tywin asked, arching his eyebrows in a way that Tyrion knew too well. Some do. Baelish answered breezily. Different people require different remedies. The plague doctors will sell only to those in need. Of course, there may not be sufficient elixirs, but one must help those they can. And my lords, 1 part in 3 of any sale will go to the Iron Throne. That announcement took others clearly by surprise. Rosewater perfume sold for a gold dragon per jug on the streets of King's Landing. What would men pay for an actual cure? Joffrey clapped. Wonderful. Splendid, Lord Baxley. You are to be congratulated. The Iron Throne will reward you for your generosity. Baelish's eyes crinkled in a smile. No need, Your Grace. It is my honor to serve the king. As Master of Coin, Tyrion should feel a sense of relief for the gold that would undoubtedly pour into the treasury. But he was quite sure that Littlefinger only served Littlefinger. A bag of powders and potions dangled from Baelish's outstretched hand. Tyrion was not the only one in the Great Hall thinking of how to secure the treasures in the precious satchel. Owen Fosselway nearly gagged at the foul odors assaulting his nose. It was not the fault of the mule, affectionately named Carrot, that trotted languidly behind, carrying the supplies. Owen had brushed Carrot down with care before he left the Tyrell compound. The smell certainly did not come from Hugh Clifton, one of Lady Margaery's personal shields. Hugh, a young dandy, was on the cusp of being knighted and hoped to serve the royal court. Flea Bottom was a dismal place, a warren of narrow streets, shabby buildings, and twisting alleys. The desperate and poor lived there, and the highborn occasionally ventured there on a lark to frequent the cheap brothels, bawdy gambler dens, and unsavory rat pits. Thankfully, most places were boarded up, one of the few positives of the plague. The alehouses, pot shops, and boarding houses remained open, as did the source of the wretched smells. Flea Bottom was famous, or infamous, for their many tanneries. Why anyone would place tannery sheds on a hill far away from a plentiful source of water made no sense to Owen. The air stunk from the urine, animal dung, and brains used to soften the leather. The human waste and other refuse were poured down the pipes and gutters that flowed down both Aegon and Rhaenys' hills to the poorest areas of Flea Bottom. It was not enough that the rich shat on the poor shat on the poor as well. We're here, master. Hugh pointed out the dingy, ramshackle building in clear need of repair. A worn-down door creaked open, and the curious eyes of children looked out at them. I am not a maester, only an acolyte. Your good sister's home? I am not certain they ever married, but she gave him 2 boys and a girl before my brother died in the Greyjoy Rebellion. Owen entered the house. The inside was clean and homey, but far too full of people. A distraught woman, suffering from lack of sleep, looked over at a young brown-haired girl, wrapped up in heavy blankets. 2 older boys, the family resemblance clear, stood by, along with a tall, hunched-over septon, an old woman tending a boiling cauldron, and several others. I am here, Kayla. This is Owen Fossaway. The Tyrell guard said to the mother. The woman looked up with a mixture of hope and worry. The maester, please, do anything you can to help Bethany, sir. I can pay a few silver stags. It is all the money I have. No need for coins. How long has she been like this? Owen knelt down near the sick girl. 4 days, my lord. I tried everything I knew. I bought a concoction from Glinda the Wood Witch and another seeds to pound into an ointment to rub on her skin. But her red spots, Kayla was close to breaking down from fear. It is not the plague, the old woman at the fire said. She has no swellings and her skin has not turned black. Owen put on thin sheepskin gloves. He placed a hand on the warm forehead, looked into the mouth and nostrils. He slid a finger down the sides of the neck and shoulders. The girl's eyes were inflamed, and there were small red bumps, but not as dark or large as the pustules of the plague. Does she have a rash and complain of pain? In the belly and back. And she itches something awful. This is not the plague, it is the pox that explains the red spots, the rash, and the pain. Owen retrieved a stone mortar and pestle from a bag. Thank the father and mother, do we need to bleed her? Bleeding does nothing to help. Pox is not the plague, but it can still be deadly. Give her clean water to drink, good food, and fresh air. I will give her willow bark for the pain. Anise oil will help with the rash. The most important thing is to keep her clean and watered and well fed. In a week she has a good chance of recovering. Are you truly a maester, my lord? I thought maesters only helped the highborn in castles. One of the boys in the cramped home said, Willem, don't say such things. Kayla scolded her son. I am not a lord. That would be my father, Jon. And he is right. The citadel is designed to benefit nobles and not small folk. But I am not a maester. I am only an acolyte, studying at Old Town. But everyone deserves to be treated fairly. What news is there of the plague in Flea Bottom? The rough-looking tall man in his stained robe spoke. Some early cases, but they burnt the bodies. Then the plague doctors showed up, and more people got sick. That is why the people of Flea Bottom have barred their doors. Plague doctors in Flea Bottom? Their elixirs sell for many gold dragons. I would think they would peddle their wares to the rich. The old woman snorted in disgust. The doctors do nothing but terrify people and take money from the dead and dying. Owen had observed much the same over the past few days. Almost every master thought these hucksters dressed as birds were useless. Who are you? What are you brewing? Marin, an herbalist. I am brewing aloe leaves in a soup. Marigold over there is a septon with the good sense not to whip himself half to death. Surrey is a midwife who helps Glinda collect plants and flowers in the woods. Jast and Kem are apothecaries. Then I have something that can help cure the plague? Morin asked. Her skepticism was shared by the others in the home. I cannot cure the plague, but I can help the people of Flea Bottom, gather anyone versed in healing, and tell them I would speak to them. He fed the concoction of King's copper and willow bark to Bethany. The young girl's fever had subsided, and she rested more easily. Owen guided her brothers in washing the soiled blankets with boiling water and wrapping the patient in fresh, clean sheets. By then, the crowd of septas, herb women, midwives, apothecaries, and hedge wizards had gathered. We have no gold for potions of mercury or magical talismans, which are just a bunch of garlic bulbs. An angry man yelled at Owen, I am not here to sell you nostrums or promise cures that don't work. Then, why have you come? Why not go back to your fancy castles? An apothecary shouted. Owen Fossaway came to help me, Kayla said in a firm voice, supported by Hugh and her sons. He gave Bethany herbs that cooled her fever and reduced her pain. For now, but how do we know it will work? The old woman said. You don't, Owen said bluntly. None of us knows if medicine will work. All we can do is improve the odds. The plague will kill thousands. But we can make it so that fewer die. How? Bleed the sick? Bath in lavender? We are poor, my lord. All we can do is hide in our homes and die. The herbalist said. Drink boiled water. Remove the bodies of the dead. Sleep in clean sheets. And this. Owen took out a large sack and poured out hundreds of berry-sized fruit, ovals of red and orange. A few were almost purple. These are rose hips. And what do you do with them? Septon Maribald asked. Pound them in the mortar and pestle. And then add aloe, the roots of violets, cloves, honey, and the shavings of fresh wood. Pour in clean, boiled water. It will make a paste. When everything is well mixed, form the paste into flat lozenges and let it dry in the shade. And do you eat these pills? An old herb witch said. Owen took a few from a pouch and handed them out. No, you put them under your tongue, but do not chew or swallow. This will not stop the plague, but it may keep the pestilence at bay. Many will still die, but hopefully less. It certainly has a pleasing odor, the apothecary said. What do we need to pay you? The herb witch said. Nothing. I am from the Reach. The Reach has an abundance of rose hips. Give your patients this pill. Tell them to wash, drink clean water, breathe fresh air, and go out into the sun. Fresh air? A man laughed. This is Flea Bottom. The buildings lean over each other, and there is no light or fresh air to be found. Then find some. Where there are houses, there are roofs, and those roofs get sunlight and fresher air. Far better to lie outside in the sun than be trapped in cramped hovels. Do not bleed the sick or rely on potions from Lord Baelish's doctors that cost gold dragons. The plague is a terrible disease and will kill many, but the 7 willing with bodies removed, with clean water and food, with fresh air and sun, fewer will die than in the great spring sickness. Tyrion Lannister walked into the small chamber with a cocky smile and a spring in his step. For his service, Petyr Baelish had been given rooms in Maegor's Holdfast. The plague doctors found quarters in the various inns and taverns in the city. Only occasionally reporting to the Red Keep, Baelish had a small group of attendants, 4 guards, a maester and a scribe. But they were outside along with Bronn and Tyrion's escorts. He plopped down the vial that Podrick had purchased 2 days ago and cleared his throat. Lord Tyrion, how can I help you? Baelish looked up from the parchment, full of numbers and figures. He pointed to the pale liquid spotted with powder in the bottle. Do you know how much this medicine costs? I do not. I leave such dreary matters to others. 5 golden dragons. Baelish chuckled. Is that right? Well, being sick is an expensive business. Maester Franken examined your elixir. This is a mix of water, honey, cloves, and cinnamon. The Maester says that cinnamon may soothe the belly, but nothing more. That elixir is the cheapest. To get more, one must pay more. The most expensive cure costs at least 25 dragons per pill, the Tyrellish said. A skilled artisan might make 3 gold dragons in a good year. A superb warhorse cost no more than 5 dragons. Have you no shame, Baelish? You are profiting from the plague. Oh, please, spare me your outrage. I collect gold while men can pay. You should understand that, as master of coin, the plague doctors only carry so much medicine. And medicine costs gold and silver. When their stocks of ointments, salves, potions are done, the doctors will leave King's Landing. They can do no more good. They're not doing any good now. These nostrums do not work. Your men are stealing from the sick. The dying do not need gold, and if they recover, they will be happy that they bought the pills. I find it strange that you, a Lannister, quibble about gold. What do you mean, Tyrion said, his anger rising. How much does your crimson doublet cost? Your bottles of Dornish red and arbor gold? How much coin do you spend on whores and guards? Your man Bronn frequents my brothels. I spend gold, but it is mine. Littlefinger laughed, his breath sweet and smelling of mint. That coin comes from your father. The power and wealth of your house comes not just from gold and silver mines, but Lannister control of the crown. Lord Tywin stabbed Barristan in the back, looted and burned King's Landing, killed Princess Yalya and her children. Your gold is covered in blood, and yours comes from theft. Baelish. How much have you stolen? From taxes and customs, from bribes you took as master and coin, and debt you borrowed for the Iron Throne, and now you are selling sham cures to the dying. I sell what people want to buy. Men die in plagues just like they do in wars. Your father killed thousands in the Riverlands. No one cares about them. Small folk can always be replaced. Did you lie about Gulltown? Is the plague running wild there? Gulltown fares well. Do you know why? My orders. When someone catches the plague, the watch seals them into their homes and forbids anyone from entering or leaving. 4 days later, they burn the bodies. The city guards are allowed to keep half of any coins or valuables found. They could not do that in King's Landing. The plague had already spread too far and fast, and allowing the gold cloaks to loot the dead, it was a wonder that anyone was alive in Gulltown. Baelish, I will tell the king about this. Your false potions will not be blamed on House Lannister. The Lord of the Vale smiled. Go ahead, Lord Tyrion. Let us see if Joffrey shares your outrage. In the library of the old palace, Myrcella read through the scrolls on Princess Nymeria Nyssar. When she left King's Landing, she had borrowed the history of the Rhoynish Wars, That book was extremely dry compared to the Dornish tales of the warrior queen. The Maester's history lacked the gore, violence, and sex that dominated the 10,000 ships and the loves of Queen Nymeria. It had been a year since she had left the Red Keep with the 2 White Cloaks and her cousin Rosamund. A year was not enough to get used to Dorne with its heat, spice, and customs. She had been saddened to leave her family, but welcomed by the Princes Dorne and Oberyn. Still, even without her mother's shrill warnings, Myrcella knew that she was a stranger, and until she married Trystane, a hostage in a foreign land. Ser Balon opened the door to the reading room. Myrcella put away the scroll, remembering the place where Queen Nymeria fought off slavers from Tyros and Volantis, as she crossed the narrow sea to land in Sunspear. Her smile grew more forced when she saw that her betrothed walked in with his sister, and 2 of Prince Oberyn's daughters. Myrcella, bad news from the capital, Trystane said. Martell guards remained with the White Cloaks, leaving her alone with the Martells and their cousins. Even Arianne's personal shield, Sir Daemon, was not allowed into the reading room. The Princess of Dorne was a truly beautiful woman, olive-skinned and buxom, with bewitching dark eyes and long, thick hair. She dressed in flowing silks and jewels that flattered her lush figure. Servants hastily brought forth several chairs and a platter of spicy flatbread, figs stuffed with nuts and cheese, blood oranges, and bite-sized kumquats. A raven arrived from Tommen. Your cousin Sir Lancel died, Arianne said. Myrcella bowed her head. He was my uncle, really, the eldest son of Sir Kevin, my grandfather's brother. I am sorry for his death. The plague is running amok in King's Landing. I wish that my father had not sent Uncle Oberyn and my cousins there. Are you not worried about your family? Arianne asked. Of course I am, Your Grace. The 7 kingdoms have not seen a plague for 90 years, and this one seems likely to bring great suffering and misery. They say this is your brother's fault, that Joffrey brought this upon his own cowardly head by committing blasphemy against the 7. Elia Sand interjected. She knew about the supposed crimes. All of Dorne did. Ever since Edric delivered Emery Lorch, the Martells followed the war very closely. Myrcella had been disgusted by the treachery, and as surprised as everyone when the twins fell, only a month later, Prince Dorne had informed them. When the Mountain's Head reached King's Landing, she was certain that the blame did not belong to Joffrey. He was too stupid to conspire with Walder Frey. Plagues have little to do with kings. Some good kings have suffered through plagues. Some bad kings have not. Daeron II died in the Great Spring Sickness, but he married a Martell and brought Dorne into the 7 kingdoms. The Great Spring Sickness killed good King Daeron. What if it kills bad King Joff? Tell me, Myrcella, would you care to be queen? Arianne asked with a smile. The laws of the Iron Throne are not the same as Dorne. But what do you want, girl? Do you wish to be queen? Albella asked. Inwardly, Myrcella did not like being called a girl by someone only a few moons older. It is not my choice. Tommen will be king. That would be the decision of my grandfather, the Lord Hand. My mother and uncles would also agree with that. The Lannisters are not the only great house. Other families may support your claim for the throne, Arianne said. Other families? My uncle Stannis will support only himself. The Tyrells plan to marry their Rose to Joffrey. Surely you are not talking about the Arryns or the Greyjoys. What about the North? You visited Winterfell, Arianne said. Why would Winterfell support me? I danced once with Robb Stark. That seems so long ago. My time at Winterfell was spent sewing with Sansa and Arya. I do not know the Starks well. Perhaps you can get to know Robb Stark better. The Northmen are reputed to be savages. They might carry southern maidens away to be ravaged. Trystane finally spoke. Myrcella and I are betrothed. If she became queen, we could not live in Dorne. Merely a jest, brother. Arianne's beautiful eyes lacked any trace of amusement. The princess was precluded from any further remarks when the door burst open again. Sir Manfred Martell rushed through with Maester Miles, Ricasso, and the treasurer, Lady Alice. Princess, dark news has come from Planky Town regarding the plague. How? The port is closed. My father instructed Housdall to shut down all trade. The Castellan, a cousin to Doran, shook his head. We have given orders. Planky Town refuses to obey. They are keeping the Greenblood open so ships can cross the narrow sea. They? Who dares disobey? Housdall has been difficult since father refused Gerard's suit for my hand. It is not Housdall to what Sir Desiel and Andre were forced back to Lemonwood. The priests of the Rowan-controlled Planky Town. They have rebelled against Sunspear. Sir Desire Manfrey admitted. Myrcella had never heard of the priests of the Rowan, except in fragments of tales older than those of Queen Nymeria. She looked upon the shocked faces of the Martells and wondered what other secrets Dorne hid from the Seven Kingdoms. Owen Fossaway smelled of Flea Bottom. No amount of rose petals and rose hips could obscure the stench. Gorlan, his good brother, had offered help, provided the Tyrells were given credit for supplying the flowers and fruit. Owen was happy to shill for the Reach, but there was only so much that could be done. The plague was a giant storm breaking over King's Landing. The pills would only protect some, but certainly was not a cure. Owen badly wanted to bathe and wash away the dirt and grime of the city. But that simple act had turned difficult. Bodies were being dumped at night into the Blackwater rush, so he feared any contact with the river water. A few public bathhouses remained open, but that meant sharing the filth of strangers. Boiling enough water to take a bath alone was problematic. He pondered his predicament when three figures appeared out of the shadows. One carried a tall spear, and another wore a cream-colored dress. He knew the third. Owen Fossaway, the woman dressed as a man, said, "Aladas, or should I call you by a different name? Your sisters, I assume?" "Oh, theirs is a fine name, and one I kept for 4 years. I plan to return to the Citadel to forge my links. My sisters, Obara and Tywin, we need you to come with us. I am very tired. It has been a long day, walking back and forth in King's Landing. Can't this wait till tomorrow?" The burly woman lunged forward, but was held back by the pale, golden-haired girl. "You are distributing rose hips to the masses in Flea Bottom. Will that make any difference?" Tywin said, "Perhaps only a little, but at least the Reach is trying to help." "What is Dorne doing?" "Investigating. Come now, so you can hear what we have found," Alleras said. "Oh? Why would I be interested?" The dusky woman held forth a cracked white mask. The half-foot beak, emptied of herbs and aromatic oils, still smelled faintly of sweet perfume. "Is this reason good enough?" That day, the small council was entirely Lannister, although Tyrion did not know why Mace Tyrell was absent. Joffrey had come down only grudgingly to the small council chambers, escorted by the Queen Mother. Besides Jaime, the other White Cloaks stood outside along with a large battalion of guards. Tyrion, under the watchful eyes of his father, presented the maester's analysis of the potion to the other members of his family. "Is this true, Lord Baelish? Is this serum useless?" Tywin asked. "It may not be the most powerful of elixirs. The strongest medicine is this." Baelish took out a silver-gray pill, streaked with black. "This one can cause you to vomit out the contagion." "And will that actually cure the disease?" Tywin said. "If the maesters are correct that the disease is caused by noxious odors, but who truly knows? It is far easier to take a life than save one," Betty said lightly. "But then you have not stopped the epidemic. The plague may still spread through King's Landing," Kevin said. "I will not get blamed for this," Joffrey cried. The Baelish smiled, and for once Tyrion thought there was a trace of laughter in those cold gray-green eyes. "Your Grace, there is a different, better way to approach this. The plague is not a problem for your rule. It is not a calamity sent down as punishment by the gods. The disease can be managed. The plague is an opportunity to strengthen your reign." "What do you mean?" Joffrey said. "You have enemies, Your Grace. Men who whisper and complain about your rule. Highborn who parrot the vile lies of Stannis Baratheon about your parentage. Small folk who grumble and curse your name. Will you let these insolent worms plot and conspire against you? The plague offers a golden moment to stamp out the faithless and disloyal." "How can you do so without harming many others?" Tyrion asked. "Look at the great sept of Baelor. The High Sparrow preaches treason and incites the septons and brothers against the throne. They call you faithless and unfit. Kill them all and let the father and mother above sort them out," Baelish said. Littlefinger did not care how many fell victim to the plague. That did not seem to bother Joffrey, but the High Sparrow knew of Cersei's crimes. It might be better for him to die, Tyrion thought. "And the poor of King's Landing, did they not insult you when Princess Myrcella left for Dorne? Likely beggar boys and vagrants from Flea Bottom." "Traitors," Joffrey raged. "They attacked me and called me names." Tyrion remembered that day. The mob demanded bread, and when no food was forthcoming, turned to throwing rocks and filth. The royal party had been lucky to escape with their lives. Several knights and the previous High Septon had not. You ordered the Hound to take their heads. Did you expect starving to bend the knee before your dog executed them? They threatened the king and deserved to die. If the poor raise their hands against the Iron Throne, they should lose their hands, Baelish said. They are your subjects, your grace, Tyrion said. It would be a poor king who killed his own. Who cares about the scum of Flea Bottom? The poor die like flies in plague and war. If they all died, another batch would come to the city and might be more grateful for their lives. Joffrey smiled, an ugly sense of glee on the pouty face. I like it. Lord Banesy King's Landing would be better without these malcontents. Not just King's Landing, but also other parts of the Seven Kingdoms. Who else? Joffrey asked eagerly. Sir Baelor Hightower, he has refused your orders, along with the other false reach lords. Let the plague bring them down. The Hightower men are in the Riverlands. How could you possibly reach him? Jaime asked. There are ways to spread the plague. The doctors could visit the Trident. A few corpses and the rivermen would not escape the disease. No, there are Lannister soldiers stationed in the Riverlands, Tywin said. Could you strike down only Sir Baelor? Cersei said, perhaps I could bring the plague to only the Hightower camp, but I could not stop the plague from claiming Harroway or the Stony Septon. No, I forbid it, Tywin interrupted forcefully. Tyrion was thankful that someone in House Lannister had a smidgen of sense. Why? Sir Baelor insulted me before the entire royal court. I want his head, Joffrey ranted. Tywin gave his grandson a withering look. Sir Baelor is not the threat. The danger is House Hightower. The Lords of the Reach know that you feuded with the heir in the Great Hall. What would they think if Sir Baelor fell dead 6 moons later in the Riverlands? Not everyone in the Seven Kingdoms is a fool. Lord Lytton is certainly not, and neither are his daughters or sons. There is no need or reason to provoke the Hightowers, their sworn houses and allies. I will not even mention Old Town, the Citadel, and the Faith. I am the king. How can I be respected if no one fears me? Sir Baelor laughs in my face. The Storm Lords do not answer my summons. The North and the Iron Islands have rebelled. I need a hand that will terrify my enemies, not one that runs away from battles. Sir Baelor needs to pay a high price for defying his king. So do the other lords that refuse my orders. House Hightower should thank the Seven that I did not strip Teth of their titles and land. The Hightowers have not rebelled against the Iron Throne. If you attack their heir, that may change. Spies report that at the Twins, Baelor was friendly with Jon Snow. Snow approached him first with the terms of the truce. If this insane scheme fails, then Sir Baelor may throw his support to the Starks. Even a rumor of such a pact endangers our alliance with the Tyrells, Tywin warned. Then Sir Baelor is a traitor and should lose his head. Bring his head to me, or I will find a hand that can. The command fell flat. Even Joffrey knew that he had gone too far. The king needs rest. Sir Yame, have the White Cloaks escort Joffrey back to Maegor's Holdfast. A cup of sweet milk may improve his nerves, Tywin said. A king does not bow down to the lords. They must bow down to me. If the Hightowers defy me, the Iron Throne looks weak. That encourages more rebellion, not less. Joffrey yelled as the Strongboar and Sir Robert Brax dragged him away. Tywin ignored the comments and waited to speak until Joffrey was forced from the council chambers. Lord Baxlish refrained from speaking with the king. Matters of greater consequence require your attention. There are reports that House Arryn's vassals are displeased at your marriage to Lady Lysa and wardship over Lord Robert. I do not need unrest in the Vale. Control your bannermen or the Iron Throne will. Pater Baelish nodded, chastened by the clear threat. The meeting ended soon after, with Cersei hurrying after Joffrey, eliciting a look of disgust from Tywin. Tyrion doubted that this was the last they would hear about this. The guards in red and yellow did not give Owen a second glance as he entered the Martell mansion. Servants brought a copper basin of heated water and clean towels to wash away dirt and dust. The house was decorated in the style of Dorne, stone courtyards, symmetrical gardens with a fountain in the center, intricately carved wood and stone with interlacing patterns, and etched tile work. The sand snakes waited and then took him to the solar. Oberyn Martell sat behind a sandalwood desk with his paramour. The contents of a leather satchel were scattered before him, and Oberyn examined a small metal chest, the size of a man's palm. There was no place to sit. as Lady Tywin took the only available chair. "You are Owen Fossaway of the Citadel." Owen nodded, his eyes on the bottles and vials of medicine. The Red Viper was famous for many things, and one was the knowledge of rare and exotic poisons. Poisoners often studied the healing arts. "Do you wish to be offered bread and salt?" Ilaria Sand asked. "No need, my lady. I assume you did not bring me here to kill me. May I ask, Prince Oberyn, how you bought an entire bag?" "I understood the plague doctors only sold a single potion at a time," Owen said. "We took it, and then I questioned the doctor about these supposed cures for the plague. Most are frauds, honey water, mixed with herbs." "Most, but not all?" Owen replied. "We do not know." Yellara stood at her father's side, one hand on his shoulder. "Owen, what did you think of Baelish's speech in the Great Hall?" "A giant pack of lies. The dates do not make sense. Why would Gulltown hear about the outbreaks in Essolth before King's Landing? How could Baelish summon physicians from Braavos in only a few weeks? If the plague exists in Myr and Pentos, then doctors would stay there. They would not cross the narrow sea for Littlefinger." "They did not." I put the man to the question. "Guess what his profession was before he became a plague doctor?" Oberyn said. "A failed maester, perhaps, or a scribe or a barber." "The man sold fruit in Gulltown, apples, pears, and plums," Oberyn said. "And the other doctors, are they also equally unskilled?" Alaris looked at her father. "Most likely, but we do not know for certain." The doctor can no longer answer any questions. My questioning was rather forceful. In the beginning, he refused to say anything, claiming that he would be punished for speaking. The false doctor was likely floating in the Blackwater. For the sake of the city, Owen hoped that was the bay and not the river. "What is Baelish playing at?" "Whoremongers always want gold. Lord Baxage has risen high through commerce and coin. He is now one of the great lords of the Seven Kingdoms," Tywin Sand declared. That was true. But there must have been more than just the desire for coin. Barristan was already a wealthy man from brothels and titles. This is a great deal of trouble for a few bags of gold. Many, many bags of golden dragons. These medicines are expensive, particularly this one. Oberyn took out a pill. "This is the prize elixir in the satchel, the one cure that the plague doctor claimed would work." "And do you believe that?" A skeptical Owen took a closer look. It was a gray-silver pill, a ball of soft metal, bright and brittle. "Even liars speak the truth sometimes. Cyrilla says that you studied metals with Jon Snow. We studied metals and mining together. Jon was always burning things in the fire in our room. He thought there were better ways to smelt ores, make steel, find and extract metals. I enjoyed the experiments. Jon and I never forged a steel or iron link, although I think he should have received one for his work on steel." "Can you identify the metal?" Alaris asked. "I am not Jon Snow. I assume you have weighed and measured it." "We have. Lighter than silver and gold. Even copper. I can try, but it will not be easy. I will need tools, equipment, and a fire." Owen wished that Jon was here. He hated that the Tyrell involvement in the war had placed them in opposing camps. "Why is it so important to know this metal? Has Dorne been affected by the plague?" "That is none of your business." Barristan snapped. "No, he deserves to know." Oberyn led Owen to an alcove. There, under an open window with wood latticework that let in the light and wind, two servants, noses and mouths covered in white linen, watched over a young woman. She was slender with long raven black hair and full lips. Her eyes were closed, and black lumps marred the pale white skin. Owen had never seen anyone so lovely and elegant, even at the edge of death. "My daughter, Nymeria. She hangs on to life by a thread. That is why we need your help." Sir Pounce was too clever. Dorcas, one of his mother's servants, had made a mouse out of scraps of fur, tied to a fishing pole. Tommen enjoyed jerking it across the room as the little black kitten chased it. But Sir Pounce outsmarted him. The kitten had stepped on the string and then ripped the head of the false mouse clean off, running away with his prize. Tommen was sure that Margaery and her cousins would be happy to provide him another kitten, but he was afraid for his little pet. There was another feline in the castle, a surly tomcat with a torn ear and a vicious streak. He had once seen the bad cat at his window, devouring a raven that was still alive. No, he would protect Sir Paints from the beast of the Red Keep. Tommen stepped quietly out of his bedroom. Normally a Kingsguard would be posted in the hall, But 2 days ago, Joffrey had come back to his chambers, cursing loudly at the rather annoyed Strongboar. Rather than face constant abuse, the 4 white cloaks stayed outside Meagher's holdfast, with only one night at the drawbridge over the dry moat. He kept to the shadows. He could request help, but that would surely bring unwanted attention. Tommen did not want his brother's scorn, or his mother's condescension. It would be almost as terrifying to encounter grandfather. Lord Tywin had a bad habit of asking about the sigils of the great houses, or the names of the free cities. Tommen wondered why grandfather simply didn't ask Myrcella. She knew all those answers and was kind and clever. He missed his sister dearly. Tommen choked back a gasp at the sight of a sinister figure with a white-beaked mask walking his way. The plague doctors frightened him with their cruel bird-like faces and full black robes, reminding him of death, disease, and decay. Tommen had heard the servants gossip among the servants. Where the doctors appeared, the plague rapidly followed. Tommen shrank against the walls and ducked down, making himself as small as possible. The plague doctor walked on silently and then turned in the direction of the rookery. He gasped when the figure raised gloved hands to touch the beaked mask. Had the stranger come to take Tommen away? Would the mask's removal reveal a grinning skull or a more fiendish visage? Some cross between a fanged baboon and a killer ape. Tommen's heart beat rapidly as the hood was lifted and slowed in relief when he saw a man, short and slender, with brown hair streaked with gray, a pointed beard, and green eyes. The unmasked man entered the rookery. Ravens croaked and quirked, covering the sound of Tommen's steps. Then he heard a familiar, imperious voice. "Baelish, are you certain this plan will be successful?" "Your Grace, nothing is entirely certain, but your reign over Westeros can only begin when your enemies are gone." "About time. I cannot stand the whining of nobles or the wailing of women and small folk. I am the king. The gods have ordained me as their divine ruler." "Of course. The people look to the Iron Throne, not the faith or the hand or nobles, for guidance. A strong monarch cannot be restrained by his advisors. Rather, he is the father of Westeros, ruling with a firm and just hand. You understand, then, my burden to be the best king possible, far, far better than my father. When the plague passes, I will make changes. How do you intend to kill these dissenters?" "Best you do not know, your grace. Then you can claim surprise. Your humble servant will take care of everything in King's Landing." A bony hand grabbed Tommen's shoulder, and the other one covered his mouth. He turned in shock to see a thin man in brown robes with a maester's chain around the long, skinny neck. The man quickly pulled them from the rookery and did not stop until they entered a spare pantry. "Prince Tommen, you should not be here. The Lord of the Vale does not like to be overheard, and his secrets are perilous to others." "I am only looking for my kitten," Sir Tommen squeaked. "I am Maester Coleman. Your Grace, you lost your kitten." "Saber Pounce, he is small and black. He ran away with a toy mouse in his mouth." "I will find Sir Pounce, your Grace. Do not speak to anyone about what you heard in the rookery. You would not be safe if others knew." Tommen gulped and agreed. Mother never believed him when Joffrey did cruel things. Better to play with Sir Pounce than face his brother. Tyrion woke to the hammering on his door. He groaned and attempted to pour out a drink into a goblet. Only a few drops remained in the wine pitcher. He squinted at the morning light. The sky was still covered in clouds, but he guessed that it was still hours before noon. "What is Podrick? Are we under attack?" "I am sorry, my lord, but Ronald Hook died last night because of the plague." "Who?" Tyrion dimly remembered that there had been a house hook in the Riverlands before Aegon's conquest. But that was very long ago. Ronald Hook, he was a keeper of the keys. The watch found his body rotting in his home, but the keys were not found. Which keys are missing? Each of the 4 keepers had their own domain. The most important had charge of the royal jewels and treasure chests. Others held keys to the armory and manors outside of King's Landing. All 4 had been appointed by Petter Baelish. The royal mint. An alarm rang in Tyrion's head. That could not be good news. Septon Maribald trudged down the street of the Sisters to the great sept of Baelor. He had not come to join the flagellants, but to beg for salt beef and barley flour for Flea Bottom. A boy could die just as easily of starvation as the plague. In the Riverlands, the lords and septs had suffered, but still they gave what they could to the poor and hungry. The faith in King's Landing was wealthier but less generous. The High Sparrow claimed that was because of the endless mouths to feed. But Maribald noted that the men at the sept seemed a well-fed lot. As he walked up Visenius Hill, the air grew more foul and thick with people. Vast crowds gathered to watch the flagellants flog each other in a strange ritual, singing hymns and chanting prayers to the Father as they walked around in a circle. The Zealots did this thrice daily, twice during the day and once in the evening. Some crazed souls even held out ragged clothes to catch the blood and smear it on their faces and bodies. Mirabald could barely read or write, but he knew one thing. There was nothing holy about blood. He had seen enough of it, shed in war. A group of sparrows, armed with crude weapons, blocked the way further, stopping 3 ominous figures in black. The plague doctors waved their canes at the Septa, asking to enter. "Get thee back, spawn of the stranger," the Septa yelled. "We have come to help. The High Septon needs our assistance," a doctor said. That pronouncement was greeted with hisses, and a wild-eyed brother lashed out with a cudgel. The club bounced off the black leather coat, but snagged on a bag, ripping it open. Hundreds of dragons and stags flew into the air. The crowd gaped and then lunged as one giant chaotic mass, maddened by treasure lust. The plague doctors darted away, flinging the satchels over their shoulders, showering bystanders with gold and silver. A wild melee broke out as men and women kicked, punched, and brawled in sight of the statue of Baelor. Mirabald had seen only coins, and no jars of cures in the bags. Surely that must have been the fault of his old eyes. Tyrion had not been the only one informed of the late Ronell Hook's passing. Harris Swift and Orton Merryweather were also at the Royal Mint, poking their ugly snouts into this business. The Watch reported to Uncle Kevin. Tyrion assumed that Sir Kevin had notified his good father. As for Merryweather, he might be a spy for the Terras or Cersei. The Royal Mint was a large and stout building with strong oak and iron doors. The facade was unimpressive, but inside there were high-vaulted ceilings and limestone floors. The air was warm from the furnaces and hearths used to melt metals and forge coins. Podrick gawked at the blacksmiths, engravers and casters busy at work. Bronn was more interested in the wheelbarrows they pushed along the floor. "Don't even think about it," Tyrion said. "Just looking, I am not going to rob the place." Of course, a robbery would be Bronn's initial thought. He was an insolent, black-hearted rogue. There are at least a dozen men stationed behind the columns, and you would not get much. The coins are minted in volume only when bullion comes from the mines, moneylenders or banks in Essos. As soon as they are struck, guards transport the coins to the royal coffers. Tyrion did not mention that those coffers were nearly empty. The crown spent at a fantastic rate, and there was no gold and silver coming from the mines in the Westerlands. A well-dressed man stepped forth, one of the king's scales in charge of weights and measures. This was one of Baelish's appointees, like so many of the men in the Treasury, tax and customs collections. "Gilbert Waters, my lords. How can I help you?" "Ronell Hook died last night. His key is missing," Tyrion began. "Lord Tywin wants to know if anything valuable was stolen. Was it gold? Silver?" Harris Swift squawked. The chinless man clutched his hands together nervously. "So much for subtlety." "What doors did Hook's key unlock?" "No coins were stolen, but the key unlocks a chest that stores the dies. To strike coins, we hammer the blanks between 2 dies. One side is a dragon, stag, or star. The other is the king. Our engravers just finished the die for King Joffrey in time for the royal wedding." "So you will be unable to strike new coins?" Swift asked, crestfallen. "We will, my lord." A messenger was dispatched to Lord Badish. His man came with a spare key. "We are forging new silver stags today. Quite lucky, I suppose. The new envoy has been asking for samples." "The envoy?" Tyrion asked. "No so Dimitis, the man from the Iron Bank. He asked to see any new coins minted." In his mind, Tyrion cursed. With Swift and Merryweather present, he could hardly confront the king's scale over the currency debasement. And yet, the man was in charge of weights. Unless he was a dullard, Gilbert Waters would know about Littlefinger's scheme. But if he didn't, Tyrion certainly could not tell him. Was everything about to come crashing down? "I would like to see the new silver stags as well." "Of course, my lord. I will be happy to send some over." The king's scale waited for the lords to leave before retiring to a small office. There, seated in a chair behind several guards, was a slender man with graying hair and a sharp, short beard. "It is done, my lord. Both the Master of Coin and the Iron Bank envoy have asked to see the new stags. Excellent, Galbert. Lothar will make sure they receive their coins. We don't have much ore, though. If we mint coins that are pure, we will run out quickly. But if the stags are only 50% silver, then the Iron Bank will know. Noco, Dimitis is quite persistent. The king's scale said nervously. Nalshu will not be a problem for much longer. In a few days, you will have no cause to worry. Bozliak handed the man a bottle of red wine. The finest strong wine from Lacey. Have a drink when you are finished. The young boy entered the blushing maiden, both hands clutching the full pouch with care. A stocky brown-haired man had given him a shiny silver stag to deliver the coins. Enough to buy a meal large enough to fill his empty belly. In the main tap room, the boy found his quarry. A tall, thin man in purple and black with a high felt hat. Noah Dimitis. The Bravozy nodded and opened the pouch under the watchful eye of his two colorfully dressed guards. He took out a silver coin marked with the boy King Joffrey Baratheon and bit the stag. It was the proper level of hardness, not soft like lead and tin. Nofo gave the boy a handful of copper stars and returned to his supper. His plans to test the other coins never happened. That night, the banker developed a terrible fever and pains in the belly. A day later, his toes and fingers would turn black from bleeding into his skin. Tyrion Lannister looked over the plans for the royal wedding. He did not look forward to the discussion with Olenna Tyrell over the costs. A tournament of singers with a gilded lute with silver strings as a prize, and that was only the beginning. There would be jugglers, jesters, mummers, and dancing bears. Perhaps he could convince the Queen of Thorns that only one bear was sufficient. My lord, the coins from the mint arrived. Splendid, Podrick. Did you count how many? 50. Quite bright and shiny. I will take a look at them later. Tyrion wondered if he could keep the anger of the Iron Bank away from the Tyrells. It would be hard to have a lavish wedding with no funds and no hope to borrow more. Pod, are you bleeding? The shy squire stammered, ashamed to have gotten hurt carrying out Tyrion's orders. Sorry, my lord. Some loose metal in the bag. I scraped my hand counting the coins. Tyrion would only realize days later what those words meant. Petyr Baelish sat quietly outside the small council chambers, waiting for an audience with the hand. Lord Tywin believed that lesser men served at his beck and call. For the most part, the old lion was right. Tywin loved control over his family, his knights, the Westerlands, and even the king. But in the Game of Thrones, every piece had a will of their own. Baelish gazed into his hands. He had paid a golden dragon for these gloves. The brown leather was thinner and more supple than the thick black ones worn by the plague doctors, but offered the same protection. The Thys seamstress in Goldtown sewed them for Baelish personally. He took out the letter and pressed the tips of his fingers on the ink. The guards waved him through. In the late afternoon, the hand worked by candlelight, writing decrees and reading reports. In the absence of a master of whispers, Tywin cultivated his own spies. Baelish doubted it matched the network of little birds that once reported to the spider. Lord Baelish, my Lord Hand, a disturbing message came from the Vale. Pale green eyes flicked up. Go on. A raven from the harbor master at Gulltown. Baelish handed the letter over. Tywin read the note, fingers touching the smeared ink. Lord Royce returned with his son and daughter from White Harbor. He brought back several casks of liquor, a gift from House Stark. So what? Lord Bax. House Royce is clearly allied with the North. Bronze Jon is a threat to peace in the Vale. Attending his son's wedding will not make Jon Royce rebel against House Aaron, and the casks may simply be a generous gift for the southern lords for coming north. Lord Royce is a difficult man, and proud. He is not pleased with Lady Laxay's rule. He wanted to fight for Ned Stark in the Riverlands. House Royce should be stripped of their lands. Tywin looked at him with a touch of scorn. Ned Stark is dead, and the Vale's ties to the younger Starks are weak. Lord Yab dislikes your marriage and your title as protector of the Vale. That is a problem for you, not the Hand. So long as Robin Arryn is in your control, Royce will not rebel. Is that all? Baelish nodded meekly and took the raven back. Specks of ink marked Tywin's skin. Baelish left the small council chambers and threw the note into an open fire. He carefully removed the dins into a pouch, making sure his hands were entirely unstained. It would not do to be caught in his own trap. Baelish would ensure that silver stags stamped with Joffrey's face passed into the hands of urchins, small folk, whores, and merchants in King's Landing. The more the plague raged, the less anyone could trace his actions. There might be ire at the plague doctors, but Baelish did not care. Nothing was more replaceable in this world than men. It had taken 2 days to get the answers. Owen assayed the metal with fire, acid, and stone. He had looked through scrolls on alchemy and searched the fragments of tomes from dead essay scholars. He ran experiments on rats, forcing the animals to breathe fumes from heated pills. He did not have good news. Antimony, a metal used by both ancient Gis and Valyria. And does it work as medicine? Elleraz asked. Only if you believe in the 4 humors. Antimony causes vomiting because it is toxic. I killed several rats with the fumes. The smoke sickened me as well. Some poisons can be used as medicine. In small amounts, snake venom can treat a fever. Tywin Sand said, the pill may kill the disease, and the patient, I do not believe it will help your sister. Antimony would weaken her further. Oberyn nodded, his face somber. We have written to the Citadel. Esselbros says Littlefinger's doctors are all charlatans and thieves. The mood in King's Landing deteriorated as the plague turned more rampant. Stories spread of plague doctors waylaid and beaten, with some seen fleeing the city. Owen wondered how much gold they had collected with their deceit. I am sorry, Prince Oberyn. You have done what you could, the Red Viper replied. But Owen knew, as he looked upon the ashen face of Nymeria Sand, that was a lie. Owen returned through empty streets to the Tyrell dwellings. He had helped a few poor souls in Flea Bottom, but it was not enough. More and more died every day. The plague had taken the greatest toll on the flagellants, but then again, no one knew the true numbers. Many healers refused to see the sick for fear of infection. Even when they did, they could do nothing. No wonder people turned to crazy men with whips or liars in masks for false salvation. The first sign of something wrong was the large crowd outside the mansion. 6 knights of the Reach stood sheepishly by their war horses. The second sign was the servants too frightened to gossip. Owen saw the anguished look on his father's face and the sorrow of the other Tyrells. Lady Arrowly was crying. The other ladies unable to give her any comfort. What has happened? Your sister. She wants to see you. Lord Fossaway said. Lyanna Fossaway, eyes closed and face pale, lay alone in a canopied bed. Even from far away, Owen could see black lumps on her neck. There were several healers in the room that he recognized, but they looked as forlorn as he felt at the Martells. Lynette, Owen is here, Gerlin said, rushing to bring him over. Even resting, his sister was in pain. Her bright eyes were red and swollen. When? Owen asked. Garland answered. This morning, my mother sent a messenger to get me from the camp. She called every maester from the Reach, bunch of useless sods. Lyanna gave her brother a sad smile. Owen, I don't need anything. Do not worry about me, save the babe. If the boy or girl lives, then I will be fine. My lady, you are a month away. The child may not survive without you. If we cut you open, you are certain to die. There are medicines, but we fear they may harm the baby. A round, pink-faced man, the maester of House Redwine, said. You have to do better than that, Garland snarled. Of all his siblings, Owen was closest to Lyanette, and she and her child were dying. As he held the hand of his beloved sister, Owen knew that he had no other choice. Asked the others to leave. Get out! Out! Galen yelled. The servants and maesters scampered out the door, leaving only Owen, his sister and good brother. There may be a way to save my sister and the babe. How? Meister Lawmess says that no one in the Citadel, not even Archmaester Rose, could heal a mother and child of the plague. No one knows how to cure the plague, Garland, but he might be able to. This is our best and only hope to save Lyanette and your child. I would give anything for that gold land, my sword. That won't be necessary. I need a raven to contact Jon Snow. In his actions, Gowland was nothing like his father. He wasted no time with questions and immediately called his men into the mansion. Saralyn was set to retrieve Lady Margaery. Knights secured the Solar, taking the place of the guards. Squires were dispatched with messages for Lady Olenna and Lord Mace. Gowland himself walked out to alert his mother. Ullery dismissed her ladies-in-waiting and other servants, allowing only a few truly loyal retainers to remain. Among them were Lawmace and Lord Fossaway. Owen marshaled his thoughts as he waited for the Tyrells to assemble. Mace was the last to arrive and sat far away from everyone else. The Lord of Highgarden truly smelled like a flower drenched in rose water and lavender. Garland, I am sorry for your loss, but is it safe for us to gather? Mace asked nervously. Lynette has not died. She fell ill this morning, Garland said. We have taken precautions, Lord Tarksliver. Not all plagues pass that easily. Master Lama said, but how do you know? I have heard the plague can be caught by merely looking at a man. Mace squeaked. The Lord of Highgarden asked a very good question. No one understood how disease was spread. Owen doubted the miasma explanation, but Archmaester Reveros, despite his studies of the human body, struggled to find one better. Garland would not ask unless it was important. Owlery said, It is, Mother. No one can speak about this to outsiders. The Lannisters must not know. What is the secret? Olenna asked, her curiosity piqued. I sent a raven to Jon Snow, asking him to come south and treat Lyanna. It is the best chance for my sister and her unborn child. Owen said, Jon Snow, Owlery said. Why would he come? Olenna asked sharply. Of course he won't. The boy would be mad to return to King's Landing and face my wrath. He will not escape me a second time. Mace cried, forgetting that he had only ranted and gawked the last time the Tyrells met Jon Snow. Be quiet, Mace. Why would he come? Olenna asked again. A sister for a sister. Jon gave me his word in the Riverlands that he would grant a favor. So long as it did not harm the Starks, he will honor my request. Margaery turned white. The wildfire wedding. You helped the Starks take away Lady Sansa from King's Landing. Mace sputtered, his round, jowly face a picture of confusion and anger. What? How could you? That is treason. You risked our lives, Fossoway. It is quite possible I saved your life, and many others in the Red Keep. Owen retorted. Stop. Explain exactly what happened. Do not leave anything out. Olenna said, After the Battle of the God's Eye, I went to the Riverlands to arrange a ransom for the prisoners. News spread among the Northmen that the Lannisters planned to wed Tyrion to Sansa Stark. Jon asked me if I would help spirit his sister away from King's Landing. I agreed, but only if he promised not to harm any Tarriels or other Reachmen. For that, he granted a favor to be redeemed in the future. He kept his word then, and I am sure he will keep his word now. What did you do? Did you help Snow take Margaery or provide him with wildfire? Olenna said, I was not involved with any of that. I knew nothing about wildfire. Jon did not share any plans with me. I only acted as his eyes and ears and told him the wedding details. Whether I helped or not, he was determined to rescue Sansa Stark. If I didn't agree, Snow would have gone to King's Landing anyway. Then he might not give a damn about how many people would die. Owen is right. After Snow took me away, he said that he promised not to harm me. He used wildfire for the Iron Throne. He could have easily burnt down the Great Hall. Everyone knew that if that happened, Margaery would have died along with her brothers and many, many others. We can't ask the North for help. The Lannisters. What will they say? Lord Tywin will not stand for this. Mace Tyrell stammered. Fuck Lord Tywin. This is my wife and my child. Garland glared at his father. Your grandchild, the first of the next generation. Perhaps. No one else needs to know. Ask Snow to meet outside the city. Garland can take Lyanna somewhere, escorted by loyal knights. They can meet in secret, Owlery said. The Queen of Thorns shook her head. Something like this does not stay secret for long. We might have a few days, or with luck, a week or two. But if Jon Snow comes south to cure the plague, everyone will find out. And if he succeeds, can he cure the plague? No one can stop a raging pestilence, my lady. Mountebanks sell useless potions, and priests pray to deaf gods. But the plague is undefeated. That has been true for all the years of Aegon's conquest. Does Jon Snow even have a silver link? Lomais said, he forged no links at the Citadel because he was too young. Jon has no steel link in smithing or iron link in warcraft. Ask the Lannisters or the Freys whether that mattered. I grant you that the boy is clever. I have corresponded with my colleagues in Old Town. They say that Snow has a sharp mind, a strong will, and a hunger for knowledge. But will that be enough? The healers of the Citadel are the best in the Seven Kingdoms, and they are helpless before the plague. Many maesters have tried their hand at a cure. All failed. Lomi said, Owen, how can Snow succeed when so many others have failed? Margaery asked. Jon is not like others. He will do things that other maesters would not consider. I saw that at the Citadel. The Lannisters found that out in the war. You witnessed his actions at the Red Keep. No one can guarantee success. The plague is a deadly riddle, one that has remained unsolved. But there is a chance for Lyanna. If anyone can cure this disease, Snow can. There are a great deal of ifs here. If Snow comes south, if the Lannisters don't hunt him down, if Lyanna survives until Snow can see her, if he can cure the plague, if that cure does not affect the baby, this is a terribly uncertain path. Olenna complained, "Jon will come, he gave me his word." "I believe he will, grandmother." Margaery said, "The North takes oaths very seriously. House Stark is known for their honor." Olenna sighed. "Yes, Ned Stark loved his honor. It got him killed. Say that Jon Snow comes south, despite all good sense, knowing that the Iron Throne would give anything to kill him. How do we deal with that? I will defend him." Garland announced, "If Snow tries to save Lyanna, that is enough for me. The Lannisters can go to the Seven Hells. I can do no less." Lord Jon added, "House Fossaway will not abandon a daughter or my good son, although I wish you had told me about this earlier." "Yes," Margaery glared at Owen. "I do not fault you for agreeing to rescue Sansa, but it would have helped greatly had we known about your agreement with Snow even after the wedding." "I don't see how, Your Grace. There was no reason to mention my bargain. I never expected to invoke this debt, not this soon, at least. I hope to redeem the favor in happier times. King Joffrey will never forgive us." And Lord Tywin and Mace said, "The crown needs gold, food, and swords. The throne needs the Tyrells. Joffrey will be difficult, but he can be managed. I doubt the Hand wants to break this alliance. Garland, do you realize the risks? The Lannisters will send men to hunt Snow down." Margaery said briskly, "I do, but I will not let my wife die if there is a chance. What if Snow can truly cure the plague? How many lives would that save in Old Town or the Reach?" Margaery nodded, "Not just in the Reach, but also in King's Landing. Lyanna is dear to us all, and so is the child. We must stand together. Let us hope that we don't die together. Half a year ago, Snow threatened to cut off our men's hands, feet, noses, and cocks, and now we need the bastard," Olenna said sourly. The Queen of Thorns was famous for her sharp tongue, but she also loved her family. The next morning, Owen and his good brother made their way through the empty streets to House Martell. It had not been easy, but he finally convinced Garland that Lynette was best left to the care of Master Lomi's Lady Allery and Margaery's ladies-in-waiting. Garland's presence by her side would do little good, and he was needed to make preparations. The mansion was quiet. The guards were concealed behind the spiked stone walls and near the stable. In the windows of the house, Owen could see the glint of steel, perhaps the points of spears or the tips of crossbow bolts. A cool breeze blew through the fruit trees. A high, sweet voice sang Autumn of My Day, accompanied by a wood harp. It was a sad melody, and when the servants brought them to the courtyard, the music abruptly died. Alrese sat by the stone fountain with a beautiful and nubile summer islander, instructing her on how to write letters in a small book. Her sisters Bellicose, Obara, and innocent-looking Tywin ate breakfast at the table while their father fed his paramour Elaria slices of blood-red oranges. "Sir Garland, to what do we owe your visit?" Oberyn asked languidly. "I brought him here," Owen said. "I was not entirely truthful yesterday. There is something more I can do for Lady Nyme." The prince turned fierce black eyes to the guests, as slender fingers played with a wickedly sharp knife. "And what is that? Speak now." "I sent a raven last night to Winterfell, asking Jon Snow to come south to treat the plague." "You think Snow will come to King's Landing, despite the dangers?" Oberyn asked. Owen nodded. "Yes, he will. I am sure of it." "And why have you asked him?" Allarez said. "My wife and Owen's sister, Lyanna, fell ill. She carries our first child," Garland said. "My condolences." "My daughter, Nymeria, caught the plague 10 days ago," Oberyn said, before turning to Owen. "How will Snow treat the disease? Can he cure Nymeria?" "I don't know, but I am certain he will try. We need to help him." Alarazaden. "Jon cannot do this on his own. What would you advise?" "Any healer needs a safe place to work. Tools, herbs, assistants, servants who can take care of patients. Guards, too. He cannot fight off the Lannisters while he is curing the plague." Allarez said, I will guard him. My men as well, Garland said. And your family? Won't they object given the alliance with the Lannisters? Oberyn asked. My family has the plague, and I will be damned if I don't try to save them. Well said. But even if he leaves Winterfell now, it would take a fortnight for Snow to arrive in King's Landing. By then, your lady may be dead. Oberyn took out a fist-sized root that had a strange forked shape, looking almost like two legs. Thin, whip-like tendrils sported from the legs. This is a rare herb smuggled out of Yiti. On the shores of the Jade Sea, they call this the breath of life. If you brought a piece this large to the Peacock Court, the Azure Emperor would give you 1,000 pieces of gold, or hang you for a thief. What does it do? Garland asked dubiously. It cools the blood. It cannot cure the plague, but it keeps the patient alive. Brew a slice in a clay pot and have her drink 1 cup a day. But there is a drawback, Oberyn said. In Yati, the goddess of birth decreed that a mother who wishes to bear a child cannot use the breath of life. When the babe is ready to be born, your wife must stop. So Leonette has 1 month, Owen said. Death is not easily cheated. The plague has killed everywhere in the known world. Yakety, Gias, the Valyrian freehold, Essos, the 7 kingdoms. And it did so quite quickly. A month is far more time than most receive. Thank you, Prince Oberyn. I pray to the gods that it will be enough, Galen said. Robb woke up to snow falling softly outside his window. Last night's storm had almost ended, leaving the tops of the towers dusted with white and the ground buried under a thick blanket. In the courtyard, the wind had blown the snow against the walls into towering drifts, tall as a warhorse. He reached his hand out to catch a few flakes. The air was crisp but not cold, at least not for a Northman. The long summer was over, but winter came only when the white winds howled from the wall. Robb had never experienced a true winter. He dressed quickly, in furs and leathers, with a dark cloak over a gray tunic. Robb was strapped on a sword and dagger, and walked past the guest house to the ancient Godswood. The courtyard was quiet, with the castle still asleep. In contrast, the Godswood was alive with sound, smell, and color. Snow shrikes trilled as they took shelter under giant oaks and soldier pines. The dire wolves rested here too, sleeping off their nocturnal hunts. Robb breathed in the snow, the moss, the heated pools, and the trees. The smells brought back the memory of his father. His father had often sat under the weirwood heart tree, cleaning ice in the pool of black water. Robb knelt and prayed to the old gods under the bright red leaves and the somber face. When he was a boy, Robb had happy dreams of becoming Lord of Winterfell. Now he understood why his father came here to brood and think. To rule a land so large as the North was no easy thing. Bronn claimed that the coming winter would be long and dark. The crops grown at Goldenfields would help, and mountains of feed and fodder were set aside so that the horses, chicken, sheep, and cattle would survive. The Wintertown boys even constructed storehouses to better house grain and dried meat. Other problems might arise, but the threat of starvation was off the table unless the next winter lasted longer than the long summer. Then all bets were off. The snow had finally stopped. The leaves rustled, the wind sighed, and Robb made one final prayer that both the small folk and the highborn would fare well in the days to come. He went to find his brother Jon. The library tower was warm and bustling with little birds and the Wintertown crew, a mix of both young boys and girls. They treated Robb with respect but no awe, too busy with projects and instructions for pageantry or pomp. That was how his brother preferred his workers, curious, energetic, and active. They charred barrels, distilled liquor, bent iron, spun thread, read books, sat through lessons, and made themselves useful. He found his brother on the top floor, surrounded by a few disciples. Jon had been working for the past week on glass. Bottles, beads, cups, bowls. Stained panels littered the long wooden table. His brother waved him over, holding a large gray rock with white and gray streaks. "We figured it out, Robb. Pyrolusite, mixed with molten glass. It takes away the green and brown tints so the end product is clear." Jon said happily, "How did we find the rock?" "House wool. Big bucket wool. Sent buckets and buckets of rocks from the northern mountains. I replied with a raven saying I would send the clan's glass bottles filled with whiskey. The Wulls, Littles, Flints, and Norries would appreciate the whiskey more than the glass," Robb thought. Still, he was glad that the quarrelsome clans were pleased with Winterfell. The mountain men loved strong drink and clamored eagerly for a distillery of their own. "What are these, John?" Sheets of clear glass were stacked together on wooden frames, but the size ranged from giant panes to squares smaller than a palm. "I have been playing with sizes and shapes. There is far more that can be done with glass than to drink wine." These panes would make beautiful stained windows. The large sheets were clear, but a pile of colored beads and cups showed the range of possibilities. Robb held up a large vase with rich blue, green, and orange colors. A layer of gold and silver sparkles were inlaid inside the glass itself. Other cups were enameled, striped, frosted, or even decorated with flowers. Robb had never been to Myr, but he was certain that in a few years the lens crafters and glassmakers in the north would match even the best craftsmen of the free cities. The small pieces of glass are far harder and more interesting. The Valyrian freehold knew how to add colors 1,000 years ago to their mosaics. "Master," Chet turned away from the window. "It has stopped snowing." "Excellent. Gather all the children and Wintertown boys. Lord Stark will lead the way," Jon said. The great hall was heavy with the smell of roasted meats. Venison rubbed with the zest of lemons, limes and oranges, hens stuffed with bacon, bread and onions, racks of lamb basted in butter, and huge auroch ribs turned on spits over the fires. The smoky aroma overpowered everything but the fresh baked bread made of wheat, rye, and barley. Robb knew the kitchens were preparing other savory and sweet treats, but those had yet to be brought out on the long trestle tables. Despite the weather, the great hall was full. Messengers had been sent to Wintertown, and the hall was full to bursting with children. Villagers who had never seen the inside of the castle gawked about the banner-covered walls as Stark guards ushered them into the room. There were a few lords like Edric Dane and Lymonderi, but most were small folk, refugees from the south. The younger boys and girls were nudged forward into a circle before the raised dais of the high table. Curious eyes from Tisha to Lady Wint watched Robb and Jon as they waited for their siblings. Several Wintertown boys brought several crates and sacks to Jon, and then took their place with the other children. The last to enter was Rickon, carried in the arms of the tall wildling woman. Robb directed his remarks toward the circle of boys and girls. "It has been 6 moons since many of you have come from King's Landing and the Riverlands. House Stark is pleased that you have adjusted well and worked hard for the North, and so we wish to have a name day celebration at Winterfell." The children gaped at Robb. "But milord, I don't know my name day." A young boy called. "Urchins and orphans rarely did." "House Stark is celebrating all of your name days. It is too hard to do it every month, so we will have one big party with presents," Jon said, opening up several large bags. The gifts were simple. Knights and dolls carved out of wood, toy animals, cauldrons, swords, and miniature boats made from wool, linen, wood, or earthenware. A few hobby horses, poles with a stuffed straw head, were shared by boys while girls admired the rattles, flutes, drums, pipes, and lutes. There were presents for the more practically minded, warm scarves, sturdy hats, and fur-lined boots. These were ignored by most of the children. The bakers in the kitchens had finished the desserts and trays of honey cakes. Blackberry tarts, apple crisps, and egg custards were brought out to the great hall. "Lord Snow," a dark-haired girl called out. Frances, one of the spider's little birds, was stunted from a life on the streets of King's Landing. She would never be tall, but since coming north, she had grown several inches. "May I have a glass bead for my name day gift?" His brother opened up a crate full of hollow glass beads. The bright colors scintillated, blues to greens, reds, yellows, and oranges. "One glass bead? No, that would not be fitting. You deserve a necklace, my lady." The Wintertown crew brought out string, wire, and metal clasps. Chet quickly assembled a necklace with 12 beads, striped and spiraled in many different hues. The girl blinked back tears of happiness as a serving maid fastened it around her neck. "Milord, is this mine?" Frances asked in a small voice. Jon chuckled. "Of course. It is a gift. Not a loan." That began a wild rush of children and quite a few adults to examine the crates of beads. The more experienced of the Wintertown crew watched over the glass, taking care to be generous but fair as they helped craft necklaces and bracelets. The rest of the feast was a happy affair with plentiful horns of nut-brown ale and brimming platters of carved roasts. Robb surveyed the great hall, pleased at the good cheer in the room. Jon and Arya fed their dire wolves slabs of venisons wrapped in bacon. Rickon stuffed his face with apple cakes, butter, and honey to the dismay of Sansa, who sipped mint tea and nibbled a lemon cake. Only Bran was ill at ease, his eyes looking far and away. Then the raven from King's Landing arrived. "No, Jon, you can't go," Sansa cried. "Sansa, perhaps we should wait until he finishes the letter," Robb snapped. The cheer of the day had faded, as the Starks, with the exception of Rickon, had retired to the Winterfell solar. The bird had brought dark tidings from the south. His brother looked up from the raven. "There is not much more to add. Owen's sister, Lady Lyanna Tyrell, is pregnant with her first child. The babe will come in a moon's time, if she is still alive." "Why have we not heard about this plague before?" Arya said. "Lord Waymond wrote that sailors have fallen ill in the city, but the number was not high. The Manderleys have taken precautions and kept those ships in the outer harbor and away from the new castle in the Wolf's Den." Jon answered, "But Fosaway says the plague is raging in King's Landing. Why aren't people dying in the north? Is it the cold?" Arya asked. "It might be, but no one quite knows. There have been epidemics in other seasons, the shivers and the fever in the winter and the great spring sickness. But if I had to guess, White Harbor is a very different city than King's Landing. It is not just colder, only 50,000 live within the walls. King's Landing has 10 times that number, and many of those are crammed in the slums. Disease breeds where there is filth. Flea Bottom was given that name for a reason. In every outbreak except the Grey Plague 60 years ago, more people died in King's Landing than in the other cities," Jon said. "Flea Bottom is a total shithole. They must be dying in droves there," a Rosette. "The poor always suffer more than the rich. The Maesters talk about how King Daeron and his grandsons died in the Great Spring sickness, but the death toll was greater among the small folk. They died without anyone knowing their names," Jon said. "Can we trust the Raven? You will be at the mercy of the Reach," Robb said. "Only Owen knows of the favor. I doubt he told the Tyras after the wedding. And Lyanna is Sir Garland's wife. We met him at River Run. He seems a better man than most. It could still be a trap. Owen and Garland may be your allies. But what about Lord Mace and Lady Olenna? They could hand you over to the Lannisters. Lord Tywin might have spies among the Reach, and if the Lannisters capture you, they will torture you. Joffrey is a monster. He is evil and cruel. He threatened to serve Robb's head at my wedding." Sansa argued, "It was easy for a king or a crown prince to make threats at the Red Keep. Robb hoped that one day he would face Joffrey on the battlefield. Would the Tyrells really betray Jon if he saved Garland's wife and child? Wouldn't that violate guest right and any sense of decency? The South is not the North. Look at the Freys. King's Landing is full of liars. The Queen, Joffrey, all the Lannisters. You would be surrounded by enemies, and they would give a great deal to kill or capture Jon." Sansa said, "Owen is not my enemy. He was my good friend at the Citadel. The Tyrells are not the Freys. Anyone who is not us is our enemy. The Tyrells cannot be trusted. They are hungry for power. They want Margaery to be queen. Why else would they join the Iron Throne after Renly died? Every noble house wants power. Our bannermen would like to be closer to Winterfell. That does not mean the Taxlolls won't protect Jon. Sir Garland certainly will," Robb said. "This doesn't matter. I am going south. I did not make a vow to the Tyrells. I gave my word to Owen. He helped rescue Sansa in King's Landing. For that, I owe a great debt. If he asks me to save Lady Lyanna, then that's what must be done. Ravens get lost. Sometimes they never arrive or the letter is dropped." Sansa argued. Jon shook his head. "No, that cannot be. I am not a nothing. I will not break my word or be branded a coward due to fear. Some promises have to be kept." "But can you cure the plague, Jon?" Arya asked. "I don't know. No one has before. It won't be easy." "Bryn, what do you see in your visions? Will Jon succeed?" Robb asked. The youngest Stark in the room wavered. "I don't know. I just see death coming for all of us." The three-eyed crow speaks in riddles. "Prophecies do not work like that. They have meaning but are never clear. We have to make decisions based on what is known." Jon said. "But if you do not know how to treat the disease," Robb said. "That doesn't matter. Owen asked me to help. There is no certainty of success, but I still need to go. When you called the banners, you did not know if you would win. You did not know whether we had allies from the Vale or the Riverlands, or how large the Lannister army was, but the Starks still marched south. So long as there is a chance, I have to try. I call the banners to save Father and our sisters, Rubb said. This is to save a sister too. Owen's sister. If I cure her, I can help thousands of others. It is too dangerous. Robb, you are the Lord of Winterfell. Forbid Jon from going, Sansa said. Lords can give orders, that does not mean they are followed. I made a vow, Jon said. Robb held up a hand to defuse the situation. He did not need House Stark to become divided, particularly since his power over his siblings was limited. I am not going to order you to break your word. I would not do that. But give me a moment. I need to consider the possibilities. Of course, Lord Stark. But there is not much time for Lyanna, or anyone who falls sick in King's Landing. Decide quickly. With that, his brother left. Jon crossed the courtyard, deep in thought, oblivious to the cold. He had attended a few of Archimaester Ebros's lectures on anatomy and the workings of the human body. Ebros, unlike many haughty scholars in the Citadel, was wise enough to admit his ignorance. The Citadel did not know much about disease. Maesters could make poultices out of mustard, nettle, and bread molds. They could identify poisons, dull pains with milk of the poppy, stitch up wounds, and set broken bones. That was good enough for most things, but not the plague. To treat the plague, a different approach was needed. He could not rely on what Ebros had already rejected as superstition and nonsense. In the thousands of years since the Citadel was founded, no maester had real success against an epidemic. Ergo, the old methods did not work. Thus, Jon had to think about this problem in a different way. He needed to take what worked before, but find new ways to accept and reject the past. He entered the library tower, only to see a black shape dart down and make a guttural sound halfway between a hiss and a meow. Barristan was no longer filthy, but had grown sleek on a diet of cooked chicken, meaty bones, and whatever rodents and birds the tomcat could hunt. The beast still had a foul temper, but at least had stopped trying to eat ravens in the rookery. Jon knelt down, rubbed behind the one good ear, and offered a slice of roast quail. Barristan sniffed and snatched the meat away before following Jon up the stairs. The library was crowded. A dozen of the Wintertown crew waited there for him, along with quite a few of the little birds. Most still wore or carried their presents from the morning. Master, what has gone wrong? A worried Chet asked. Why do you think that? Did one of you read the raven that came today? No, milord, we would never do that. We could tell from your brother's face that there was bad news, and then your sisters looked upset. Daenerys said. And after the raven, all the Starks went to the solar. We posted a few boys to see when you would leave, and where you were going, Jerry said. Jon smiled, in spite of his concerns. He could hardly blame the Wintertown crew for being clever. Something has happened in King's Landing. Something quite serious. What can we do? Chet said. Jon looked around the room. There were a few marks on the shelves and scrolls from the fire set by the footpad, who failed to kill Bran. The books were intact, with a few singed leaves. The Winterfell library was no match for the enormous vaults of the Citadel, but there was still a great deal of knowledge stored here. How many of you can read? Most of the hands were raised, although a few were tentative. Good. There are over 100 books in this room. I want them all to be read. Skim every page for mentions of plague and pestilence, descriptions of the symptoms, how long it lasted, how many days for people to die, where it came from, and what should we do with the information? Jerry asked, Write it down or tell me which pages. Give me everything you can find. Today, if possible. The children broke off into groups of 2s and 3s as Chet and the older boys took down the books and sorted them into piles. Jon took a quill and a sheet of parchment into Luwin's study. He needed a quiet place to think. As the skin on the feet, fingers, and nose turned black, the boy did not complain. Podrick Payne was a stumble-tongue, but a better squire than Tyrion had deserved. Far braver, too. In his last days, Podrick suffered fevers, chills, and aches, but the boy did not cry. He only asked that his bones be brought back to the Westerlands. Tyrion agreed, knowing that was impossible while the plague raged in King's Landing. Podrick died on the 3rd morning. Tyrion was not given to sentiment. His father taught them that servants were tools to be used and discarded when needed. But the boy, despite shyness and stuttering, had rendered good service. Pod's father died in the Greyjoy Rebellion. His mother ran away with a landed knight. The boy was taken in as a squire, and that relative, Sir Cedric Payne, had been killed in the Riverlands. Then Pod joined a fat hedge knight, who was hanged for stealing a ham. That was when Lord Tywin had given Tyrion the boy as a squire. Some would say the gods were cruel, but it was not the gods that killed Podrick. Littlefinger is to blame for this. Baelish, how could he give Pod the plague? Bronn asked. Tyrion stopped pacing. We went to the Royal Mint and asked for a sample of the new silver stags. Pod counted the coins when they came. So? The silver stags were also sent to the envoy from Braavos. Noho Demetis died yesterday of the plague. That doesn't prove anything. Lots of people are dying in King's Landing. There are so many dead septons and septas that no one is praying to the faith. The plazas and gardens near the Great Sept are full of corpses. There is no room to even bury the dead, Bronn said. I am sure it is Baelish. Tyrion had not shared Littlefinger's plot to remove Joffrey's enemies. If it came out that the king considered using the plague as a weapon, the entire city might revolt. No one would believe that the Lannisters had rejected the idea. The faith would be beyond angry, and he shuddered at the reaction of the Hightowers and the Reachmen. Wait a moment, Bronn said indignantly. You just gave me silver stags to buy wine. Podrick cleaned the coins, and I had the coins washed before they were weighed. Tyrion was surprised that the stags were pure silver. Did Baelish find out about his father's suspicions, or was it a ploy to throw the Iron Bank off the trail? But if the coins carried the plague, oh, stop whining. I threw a stag 2 days ago to the balding harper at the wine sink, Simon Fat's tongue, or whatever his name is. He was still alive and singing his wretched songs last night, Tyrion snapped. That also meant that there was no physical proof. The poison that caused the plague must have washed off. Tyrion knew that Baelish did not give a fig about a squire. The coins had been sent to kill him. Tyrion, his brother hurried through the door. You need to come alone. Lord Tywin rested upon a large bed, covered in gold and crimson blankets. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was shallow, but steady. There were only a few points of swelling around the neck, and the lumps were smaller than Lancel's. Tyrion looked carefully about the hands and feet. There was no blackening of skin in the fingers and toes. The bedroom was in a small wing of Maegor's Holdfast, off the Queen's ballroom. The shades were drawn over the closed windows, hiding the inhabitants of the room from any watchers in the Red Keep. Guards and white cloaks stood outside, while most of the family gathered in the antechamber. Joffrey was near the door. Cersei, Tyrion, and Jaime stood closest to their father. Jeddah and Kevin watched over an upset Tommen. If you don't save him, your head will decorate a spike on Traitor's Walk, his sister ranted. Threats to the Maester will not make your father recover. And Jenna said, Well said. What is your name? Tyrion asked. The Maester, a gray-haired man with a short beard, turned away from the bed. Belden, my lord. My grandfather was also Belden. He served as Maester at Casterly Rock for Lord Tydos. What happened to my father? When did he fall ill? 2 days ago, Lord Typseard complained of headache and fever. He had soreness in his arms. I made an ointment of king's copper and pennyroyal. I gave him dream wine for the pain and coriander for the fever. His temperature is better now. What about the plague, you fool? Cersei said, Lord Tywin has the plague, but he will not die if the swelling does not spread. His condition is better than most, but no one knows whether a man will recover. A few do if their blood does not turn sick. The Maester said. His squire deteriorated quickly after the fingers became black. Was there any way to stop that? Tyrion found the arm soreness curious as well. Early in the ordeal, Podrick said that his right hand throbbed in pain. That had alerted Tyrion to the silver coins. Your Grace, I came as soon as I heard. A slender, short man bowed to Joffrey. And how did you hear, Baelish? Tyrion asked. His Grace has been generous to grant me quarters in the Holdfast. The servants told me that the Lord Hand had taken to his bed. My grandfather has fallen ill from the plague. Joffrey said, A great loss to the Iron Throne, your Grace, but he will surely recover. Of course, Lord Tywin was not meant to die in bed like a small folk stricken with the plague. Great men do not pass away like this. Cersei had not paid much attention to history. I have bought medicine. Littlefinger held out several silver-gray pills. This will rid Lord Tywin of the bad humors. Joffrey's eyes lit up. Thank you, Baelish. Maester, give these pills to my grandfather. But your grace, I have already purged him with pepper potions, Belden said. Are you disobeying your king? Joffrey asked, his voice raising in pitch to a near screech. Of course not, Tyrion said smoothly. Maester Belden only means that he will administer the pills later, after father has rested. After all, one must wait for the humors to return before voiding them again. Joffrey grunted his agreement. His nephew was never quick on his feet unless he was torturing small animals. Lord Basie, I received a shipment of silver stags from the mint, and then my squire died of the plague. Silver stags? I know nothing about that, but I am sorry to hear about your squire. Every death is a tragedy. Did you consult my plague doctors? Perhaps they could have saved the poor boy. The plague is raging in King's Landing. What have your doctors done, besides take silver and gold for their cures? Tyrion replied, Yes, they have been overwhelmed. Many have given their lives fighting the plague. I mourn their loss and hope that their sacrifice will be remembered. Littlefinger said piously. Tyrion had known many liars in his life. Baelish was one of the best. The former master of coin had a gift for worming out of trouble by claiming to be friendly and helpful. With friends like Baelish, you did not need enemies to stab you in the back. Lord Baelish, I have not rewarded you for your aid. An appointment to the Small Council is in order, Joffrey said. Small Council? You cannot appoint a member of the Small Council without approval of the Hand, Tyrion said. The Hand is indisposed, Joffrey shouted back. Baddesley held up his arms in a gesture of peace. Your Grace, there is no need for any trouble. I am happy to serve the king in any way possible, whether in the Small Council or as a Rod of the Vale, or Privy Councillor. I am at your command. Joffrey left the chamber with a sullen glare. Tyrion ignored that look, waiting for everyone to depart to speak to the Maester alone. Belden, throw away the pills. Do not treat Lord Tywin with any medicine that you have not made with your own hands. I do not trust Baxley or his bizarre doctors. But my lord, the king's orders... Are you loyal to House Lannister? The Maester gave a brief nod. Then keep my father alive. Tyrion stepped into the hall. He would ask Cain to reinforce the guards, and Aunt Jenna to watch over things. Her loyalty to Tywin was clear. His father's guards were Westermen, sworn to Castery Rock. He was not certain whether the pills were poison, but the Baelish would regret sending the silver stags. A Lannister always paid his debts. Besides, if anyone killed his father, it would be Tyrion, not some smarmy schemer from the Vale. Sir Roderick Cassel escorted the old lady to the Solar. Robb nodded, and the Master-at-Arms bowed, before returning to the courtyard. Sir Roderick buried his grief over his nephew Jory's death by dedicating himself to training a new generation of Stark guardsmen. Robb poured a goblet of wine for Lady Wen. Thank you, Lord Robb. I am grateful for your hospitality, and that my servants have found positions in Winterfell. My family is much obliged, too. No more than what was deserved. I did not know you brought family north. My great-niece, Winifred. She was married to Danwell Frey before Snow burned him alive, and now she is wed to Ser Tollet and happily settled along the Weeping Water. There were a lot of Frey widows in the north. Robb was thankful that Sansa was in charge of their marriages. Lady Wyn, I have something to ask. Your house had ties to the Crown and many other families in the Riverlands and Crown Lands. We did once before the rebellion. My husband declared for Prince Rhaegar. My 4 sons died in the war, and Lord Walter died of grief. House Wend had many friends when we were strong, but few after Robert became king. I am sorry for that, my lady. The old woman shrugged. Don't be. It is a common enough story after the rebellion. The harpers love to sing songs about the victors, but there are losers in every war. I want to ask about House Tyrell. When you were at Harrenhal, did you encounter them? Are they a family to be trusted? Robb said. The Tyrells? Lord Mace is a fool. I saw him at Harrenhal at the Great Tourney. He was the new Lord of the Roses. I don't remember who knocked him off his horse. The tourney in the year of the false spring? That was where Rhaegar Targaryen named my aunt Lyanna the Queen of Love and Beauty. Before he raped her, Robb muttered. I beg pardon, my lord, but Prince Rhaegar never raped Lady Lyanna. My cousin, Soccer Oswell, was the prince's companion. Oswell never knew a better man. Rhaegar made 2 errors. He did not want to be a kinslayer. Rhaegar should have killed his father, Agrace, and his second mistake was to trust others. Max Tyrell wasted the manpower of the Reach feasting at Storm's End. The Martells never sent enough men. Rakhar would have been a great king, far better than the drunk, the old lady said. But Rosier fought for Arras. He led the king's armies in the rebellion. Rakhar knew his father was mad. The tourney was in the name of Houswen. But it was the prince who provided the funds. He wanted to sound out the great lords on overthrowing Aerys. Somehow Lord Jairus found out, and the king came to Harrenhal. All of our lives would change had Rakhar succeeded. Your aunt would be alive, and my sons. Did the Tyrells betray the Targaryens? The Lannisters did? Lord Taxlees sacked King's Landing only after Rhaegar died. No, the Taxlees never betrayed the Iron Throne. The Lannisters are capable, but not to be trusted. The Taxlees are loyal idiots. If Mace Taxley marched his army into the Riverlands, Robert would have died at the Trident. What about the other Tyrace? The Queen of Thorns seems cunning, Robb said, trying to digest Lady Wayne's clear dislike for Highgarden. She has a sharp tongue, she says clever things, but what has Lady Olenna done that merits any great praise? After Rensley died, the Tyrells agreed to an alliance so that Margaery would become queen. That might be Lady Olenna's work. Your father also betrothed Sansa to Joffrey, so that a Stark would become queen. How did that work out? The old lady's face softened a bit. I am sorry, Lord Stark. Ladies grow querulous with old age. I have not forgiven the Tyrells for their foolishness in the war. But they are not evil or treacherous, just dolts, or at least Lord Mace is. Robb agreed with Lady Wyn's thoughts. The Reach had many swords, but the leadership was unimpressive. He saw that firsthand at Bitterbridge and Redgrass Field. His father blundered badly when he went south. Ned Stark trusted the wrong people, and that had a very high cost. Stark guards were slaughtered in King's Landing. Sansa was taken prisoner by the Lannisters, and Arya barely escaped with her life. Father had lost his freedom and his head. Robb knew his brother would go south. He wondered how he could help Jon not make the same mistakes. The Dornish were famous for their hot blood. Certainly the princess had more than enough to spare for her entire family. Arianne had not bothered to wait for Prince Doran's men. She had assembled all the guards and then summoned knights from nearby holdfasts. With her small force, Arianne set off on horse with Aelia and Obella Sand to confront the priests. Sarah Manfrey had kept Trystane in Sunspear. The short trip took several days, given the train of supply wagons carrying food, siege weapons, and even a large and heavy battering ram. Princess, I think you should stay behind. Cierziers was speaking not to Arianne, who could certainly have used the words of caution, but to Myrcella, cantering along on a white mare. No, sir. I want to learn more about these priests. Besides, I have 2 white cloaks at my side. She smiled at Sir Azircard and Sir Bolund Swan. The 2 knights had not wanted her to travel to Planky Town, but her wishes carried the day. One day, her children might rule this land. She needed to learn everything she could about Dorne. The small stone citadel came into view. It was more of a watchtower than a castle, designed to ward off pirates who sailed the summer seas. Even before the Martell guards could halt, the portcullis was raised, the castellan rode out, dismounted, and knelt in the red sand. Sir Miles, why have you disobeyed your sworn house? Arianne said, mounted on her horse. Your Grace, we have nothing to do with the revolt, but we cannot attack either. To shed the blood of the priests, it would be abject. Have the priests arrested then. I will not allow them to preach treason. The castellan rose, and more mounted soldiers sallied forth from the citadel. My men follow House Martell, but it would be better for you to take our heads than seize the priests. They rode to the outskirts of the city. Planky Town was like nothing Myrcella had ever seen. There were no streets, but a sprawling hodgepodge of small and large ships connected by long planks and lashed together with hempen rope. Painted pole boats, hulking barges, and merchant vessels of all sizes formed the houses, halls, and shops. Ferries and bridges ran from the shores of the river to the settlement. The floating city was remarkable, but even more so were the vast array of rafts beyond Planky Town. An armada of small boats could be seen on the murky waters of the Green Blood. Rafts and shallow pole boats that could only hold a family or 2. The line of tiny vessels stretched into the horizon, humble boats with shallow bottoms and wide beams, painted in bright colors and decorated with carvings of sea creatures. turtles, crabs, and serpents. On the rafts, hundreds and hundreds of people with olive skin and dark hair stood silent as they poled down the river. They were waiting for something, Myrcella realized. But what could it be, and why would they have assembled here, at Plankytown, despite the plague? They made their way onto the wood bridge, wide enough for wagons to pass. A phalanx of Mortell's spearmen with interlocking round shields walked ahead, parting the crowd gently. The Princess of Dorne and her cousins were ringed by half a dozen knights, including Daemon Sand, Ariane's sworn shield. Myrcella followed with the two Kingsguard, watching carefully for any trouble. Her knights did not need to worry. At King's Landing, the small folk looked upon the royal family with awe and fear. But on the bridge, the crowd barely reacted. The swarthy man with a jade stud in one ear approached the group. "Your Grace, you should not have come. Let me through, Garin. How could you betray me?" Ariane cried, "I am an orphan of the green blood. When the priests of the Mother call, we must answer, just as the Ruinair have always done." The dark-skinned man said. Myrcella crept up on the end of the bridge. A short leap over the river away, on a nondescript boat, men and women knelt in an outward-facing circle, hands in prayer. They were dressed plainly, without vestments or 7-colored crystals. An older woman stood, the dark eyes on her dark face sharp. In her withered hands she carried a sphere of water. No drop fell. "You are not wanted here. Begone." The priestess said. Ariane stepped forth, her fury obvious to all. "I am the Princess of Dorne. By gathering in Plankytown in such numbers you endanger us all. The plague." The old woman looked at the royals with scorn. "Mother Roan will protect us." "This is the green blood, old woman. The Roan is in Essos. You forget yourself. We belong to Mother Roan, whose waters nourished us from the dawn of days. We stood proud, even in the face of dragons." The priestess said, "House Martell led you against the dragons. Maria Martell, Lady of Sunspear, stood against Aegon the Conqueror and kept Dorne free," Ariane replied. "You have forgotten, princess. The troubles began long before the Targaryens. Nymeria fled Essos. It was Prince Garin who stood against Valyria. It was Prince Garin who defended his people against the dragons. It was Prince Garin that invoked the magic of the Roin." Rosier recalled the book on the Romish Wars. Garin the Great assembled a mighty host to oppose the Valyrian colonies. He won victories, even against 3 dragons, but at Volantis, the Valyrian freehold showed their true strength. The Dragon Lords crushed Garin's army, captured the prince, destroyed the cities, and enslaved the Ruinair. Only Princess Nymeria escaped, fleeing Essos in the 10,000 ships, and the last remnants of a great people. Prince Garin was brave, but failed. He fought a war that could not be won. My ancestor Nymeria saved us. She saved you. You know nothing. Nothing about Mother Rowan. Nothing about Prince Garin. The past is never dead. It is not even past. Go play your little games, princess, against the lions, the stags, and the wolves. They do not matter. The dragon will come to the Rowan. The orphans of the green blood will be orphans no more. And House Martell will not rule the Ruinair. Ariane stormed off with her cousins, and Myrcella feared that the princess would do something foolish like order an attack. Myrcella intercepted the Dornish women. "Your Grace, shouldn't you ask the priestess more questions? What if she is making a true prophecy?" Yaxlane snarled. "Piss on her prophecies. The line of Nymeria has ruled the Ruinair for 1,000 years. 999. House Martell will not reach 1,000. Everything ends." The wind began to blow more fiercely, and the bridge trembled. Waves pounded the shore, and the boats of Plankytown bobbed up and down against the tide. The soldiers hesitated. Myrcella did not. She approached the priests. "Good lady, what will happen to House Martell?" The old priestess stared at her. "You are the lion girl. I am Princess Myrcella Baratheon, betrothed to Trystane Martell. You are no princess, but a lion girl. At least you have the courage to ask. 1,000 years ago, the Dragon Lords of Valyria in their great wrath captured Garin and hung him in a cage of gold. They mocked him and killed his people. Garin called on Mother Roan, and that night, the waters rose and drowned the Valyrian invaders. The waters also drowned Chréane. With the Valyrians started, Garin's curse finished. Usse pointed out. In the Sorrows, there are only ruined cities haunted by stone men. "But what does this have to do with Dorne and House Martell?" Myrcella asked. When our need is greatest, Prince Giran will come to fight for the Rhoynar. How? Myrcella asked. He died 1,000 years ago. Lion Girl! Prince Giran never died. For a millennium, he was tormented by mists and fog. His flesh turned to stone and his lips cold as ice. Is not 1,000 years enough? That is how long Giran has waited in the sorrows and how long Mother Roan has waited for her children. She will call us home soon. The boy approached nervously and then opened the tattered scroll. He gained more confidence as quick fingers pointed out to Jon the relevant entry in journals by Nicios Q. Harris. After the doom, Valyrian forces fleeing west had spread the plague to Volantis, and the pestilence had killed thousands and done immense damage to maritime trade with the east. Q. Harris had written about the symptoms, fever, diarrhea, and pustular eruptions on the skin. More interesting was that these signs often took over a week to occur. Good work, Wex, Jon said. Roose Pike had been captured, raiding the stony shore. The brown-haired boy with a feral face and pointed nose looked older than his 12 name days. Chet discovered that the Ironborn was not unintelligent, only mute. With Jon's permission, the former prisoner had been welcomed into the ranks of the Wintertown boys and taught how to read and write. The boy learned quickly and was adept at numbers. What would you like as a reward? The boy quickly found a book, placed in the pile for those with no reference to plagues or disease. He opened the pages to an engraving of a ship with a long, narrow hull, a sharp bow which cut through the waves rather than riding atop, and 3 raking masts with large sails. When fully rigged and riding a trade wind, this vessel was the fastest on the sea. Jon thought fondly of his distant relative that designed, built, and captained the ship. The Sea Snake, Corlys Velaryon went to Essos, Corus, Ling, Ut, and back. This must be the 9 voyages. Do you want to sail that far as well? Wix grinned back, a smile on his wide mouth. Someday the Northern Fleet will go to the ends of the world to trade whiskey, cloth, and glass for silk and spices. Perhaps you will navigate one of those ships. I know you are there, Arya, Jon called out, eyes still lowered as he scribbled away. His sister came out of the shadows, a scowl on her long face. How did you know? I didn't. Balerion did. Jon patted the tomcat, who stared at Arya insolently. He can hear as well as Ghost can smell. Robb sent me to get you. Jon nodded, and then packed away sheets of paper into a small satchel along with quills, glass, and bundles of herbs. With a hiss, Balerion jumped into the bag. Jon shrugged and looped the satchel over his right shoulder, the black tomcat's torn ear peeking out at the top. Did you find anything in the books? Arya asked. Some ideas, but I will not know if they have any value until we go south. Of course, I doubt I could leave you behind. Jon ruffled his sister's hair fondly. Damn right, Arya smiled. The guards let them into the solar. Robb was there alone, a frown on his solemn face. He waited until his siblings sat down. I asked Bran to come, but he said he already saw what would happen. But he won't tell me. I also asked Sansa to come, but she is too upset. She feels guilty. If you die in the south, she believes it will be her fault. Rose said, It is no one's fault, and certainly not hers. It is my choice, and I will not break my word. I will not stop you, Jon, but I worry about the Tyrells. Sarah Garland may be honorable, but I do not trust the rest of the family. Are you certain they can protect you from the Lannisters? No one is certain of anything, Robb. I do not know if I can cure the plague or if a spy will betray me to Lord Tatsley. My ship could sink, or I might catch the disease and die. It would be safer to stay at Winterfell and rebuild the north. It would be easier if the pack stayed together, but we do not choose our trials in life. We only choose how we face such things, Jon said. Be careful, Jon. Take Sandor Clegane and Brienne of Tarth, Robb said. The Hound and Brienne? The Lannisters won't forget the last time those two were in the city. We need stealth as well. I will go south to watch Jon's back. I am his squire, Arya said. I plan to bring Ghost and Nymeria. Dire wolves make better guards than any men, Jon said. Dire wolves will stand out more than 2 very tall knights in King's Landing, Robb said. We are not going to King's Landing. We will sail to Maidenpool. It has a busy harbor, and the town is behind walls. There are 3 roads out, and it is 250 miles away from King's Landing in the Riverlands. House Mooten rules Maidenpool. Lord William betrayed us to the Lannisters, Robb said. Sir Garland will deal with Lord Mooton as a show of faith for our trip south. I will send ravens to Owen and Lord Wyman. Aery and I sail from White Harbor in 5 days' time. The Wintertown crew and the little birds refrained from questions until he finished speaking. On the faces in the great hall there were looks of unease, concern, and some fear, but no real surprise. The children in the library knew Jon's interest in plague and pestilence. In King's Landing, the little birds traded secrets and whispers for coins and food. Those skills, beaten into them by hunger and suffering, had not disappeared at Winterfell. No one should feel obliged to come. Going south will be dangerous. First, there is the plague. We will take precautions, but it is a deadly disease. Then, there are the Lannisters. I believe Sir Garland will protect us, but I cannot speak for all the Reachmen. Those are the known threats. There may be other perils lurking. Lord Mooton is a traitor, and the Iron Throne may have other spies. Tywin Lannister could use gold to buy more Boltons and Freys, Jon said. In the harsh light of the pale morning sun, the name day celebration yesterday seemed long ago. The great hall was less crowded. Chet and Garyon had gathered the young boys and girls, but there were few other small folk. Arya stood by Jon's side, and so did Sandor Clegane and Brienne of Tarth. Garyon hid in the shadows, yellow eyes sweeping about the room. "My lord, do we know anything more today? Did the books yield anything of value?" Chet asked. "The library at Winterfell is not complete. Only a few scrolls date before Yegan's conquest, and those do a poor job describing disease. I believe the first known outbreak of the plague was in the Valyrian Freehold. A decade before the Doom, there are reports of an epidemic that caused buboes, swellings in the thighs, neck, armpits, and groin that turned black before death," Jon said. "How did the Valyrians deal with the plague?" A voice cried out in the back. "They died. In the capital, 2 men out of 5 passed away. The plague lasted 9 years, but lord, if Valyria could not find a cure, how can we?" Dainsy asked. Even 400 years later, the achievements of the Freehold remained unmatched. It was not just their dragons. The Valyrians were strong in blood magic, the dark arts, and building with stone and fire. The dragon roads that crisscrossed Essos lasted long after the Doom, as did the castle Dragonstone. "We may not succeed. No maester or healer has found a cure for the plague. But that does mean we cannot. Someone has to be first. Why not us? Why not now? The cure is out there. It merely has not been found. We have to uncover the mysteries of the human body and the plague." "But, milord, should we dare to do such a thing?" Arthur, a scruffy little bird, asked. "What do you mean?" Jon asked. "The plague is a divine punishment, sent down for the sins of the crown, for the crimes of Joffrey the Ill-Born, the son of the Kingslayer, and his sister. Would the gods be angered if we found a cure?" Another boy from the Riverlands spoke up. "The mother is merciful, and the father is just. The 7 may strike at Joffrey, but they would not send the plague to smite us. Perhaps the faith of the 7 has little sway where the old gods reign. They might send a plague to King's Landing, but not to Winterfell." Arthur, the little bird, said. Jon held up a hand to end the debate. "I have read of many gods. He who denies them is as blind as he who trusts them too deeply. But the plague does not just claim the wicked. Young boys and girls die. Old men and women. What god would scorn us for saving those in need? If a god rejects people for helping others, then that is not a god I would follow." "My lord, will the 7 bless your efforts?" a voice called out from the crowd. Jon shrugged his shoulders. "I do not know, nor I do not care. I intend to cure the plague. The gods can do what they wish, but we will fight to save lives." He looked over the room. "Who wants to come?" Many hands in the room went up. Jon expected the Wintertown boys to volunteer, but the little birds also stepped forward, as did Beric and Thoros. Edric Dane raised his arm, and a face that he had not expected, a curious Asha Greyjoy flanked by Brienne of Tarth. Jon sighed. "Thank you for the interest, but all of you can't come. We only have 1 ship, and many of you have duties up north to help House Stark with the farms, forges, fields, and mills. I will decide who goes. We leave this morning for White Harbor." The last time she left Winterfell 2 years ago, Arya piled all of her clothing, gowns, skirts, tunics, cloaks, small clothes, and girdles into a great ironwood chest. The chest was larger than she was. She remembered fondly that Nymeria, then only a pup, helped her pack by fetching items with her jaws. This time, she wore a leather doublet and trousers in gray and brown. Her only other set of clothes fit into a saddlebag with the light brigandine and weapons. Nymeria was far too large now to retrieve wisps of silk or linen. Rosiera stood with the others at the south gate, watching the loading of the wagons. A squire's responsibility was to saddle horses, carry the knight's flag into battle, and take care of armor and weapons. Jon did not have much need for any of that. His garron was docile. Even next to Ghost, her brother had a banner for war. But they would not bring that south. Jon wore boiled leather and carried a plain longsword. Chet, Jerry, and the rest of the Wintertown crew took charge of the equipment. Crates were filled with all sorts of tools, jars, flasks, crucibles, strainers and filters, fragile utensils, glass sheets, metals, rocks, and sealed beakers were swathed in sheepskin. Two young boys struggled with a large box. "Why don't you help, Clegane?" Yak said, "I am a guard, not a porter," the hound scoffed, swigging from a large flask. "My only job is to keep your crazy brother alive. Jon Snow is Ossory he reborn. The Lord of Light will not let him die." Thoros of Myr insisted, "He let that fucker die 4 or 5 times. Clegane pointed at Beric Dondarrion. The Lightning Lord ignored the words, his one good eye fixed on the library tower. A frayed brown headband covered the missing right eye, where he had been stabbed by the mountain's dirk. "Lord Beric serves the Lord of Light for a reason. As do we all. I was a failed, drunk priest, but the Lord of Light has woken my heart and given me powers to bring Beric back. We are part of something larger than ourselves," Thoros said. "I don't care about your stupid fire god. I am here to protect Snow's back. I can do a better job than you cunts in the Brotherhood. Dying and returning to life is a shitty way to go." Sandor Clegane was a mean brute, but no one doubted his skill at fighting. Oria was glad that the hound would be guarding her brother. She worried about Jon's safety down south. She had seen enough of Joffrey and Tywin to know that the Lannisters were hungry for revenge. Oria did not trust the Tyrells either. Owen might be a friend, but one Fossaway did not speak for the entire Reach. Would the Roses want revenge for the God's Eye or the Wildfire wedding? "Clegane, why are you even heading south? We swore our swords to Jon Snow, but you did not. The Starks would be happy to give you gold or even a bit of land for your service at the Twins. You are not the type to risk the plague to heal others," Beric said. "First time I saw Snow, he chopped off my brother's hand, foot, and head. That was after Snow burnt Gregor alive and set the Red Keep on fire." "So you serve him because of your brother's death?" Thoros asked. An ugly smile crossed Sandor's face. "Part of the reason, but the other is that Snow is a killer, a very good one. The world is built by killers. Robert Baratheon. Tywin Lannister. I want to see the world that Snow builds. I want to see him tear things down and build them back again." "The Lannisters will be after you as well," Arya warned. "Joffrey will be upset that you broke your oath as a White Cloak. He can try to take my head. I am not afraid of Lannister knights. Sparred with enough of those fuckers. Living is hard. Dying is easy. Well, except for Dondarrion. That fucker can't even die." Clegane's remarks were interrupted by the approach of her brothers along with Ghost and Nymeria. Jon gently placed Balerion onto a wagon. The black cat sniffed and found a warm place between several furs. "We are ready to leave. A boat is waiting for us on the White Knife." "I'm coming with you to White Harbor," Robb said. "I wish to speak to the Manderleys anyway. Sansa will be the Lady of Winterfell in my absence." "You should take more guards, Jon." "I don't need that many, Robb. Better for us to be fewer and mobile. If the Tyrells cannot protect us from Lord Tywin, a dozen more men won't help." Her brothers had clearly been arguing over that issue. Before Arya could offer any thoughts, a bewildered Brienne of Tarth called out, "I tried to stop her, Lord Stark, but she wouldn't listen." Asha Greyjoy had been on her best behavior the past few weeks. The Ironborn woman was allowed to roam the inner keep with only a thin pair of chains on her slender arms. "Snow, I want to come south with you." "You are a prisoner of the North, Lady Asha," Robb said. "I am a captain, not a lady. You said that if my Ironborn crew built ships for the Northern Fleet, you would consider freeing them." "I said I might free them. I did not say you would be freed," Robb replied. "The fleet is not finished. Your crews have done good work, but completing the ships will take another moon or two, Jon said. The Greyjoy certainly did not lack confidence. I want to sail one of these copper-bottomed ships to the ends of the world, to Essos and beyond. I was my father's most trusted captain. I can take you south and show you that I am the best man you have in the fleet. I am not going very far, and you would be the best woman, not man, in the fleet, Jon said. If my brother needs to sail to faraway shores, I would consider your release. But how do we know that you will be loyal? Robb asked. Asha pointed boldly at the former Brotherhood men and the Hound. How do you know they will? We swore an oath, Lord Beric said. Asha waved her hand dismissively. I can do that too. I can be as faithful as any bandit from the Riverlands or turncloak from the Lannisters. Thank you for the offer, Lady Asha. For this trip, I don't want an Ironborn captain. I just need to go south. Jon mounted his horse to depart the castle. Ordea and Robb rode at his side, and Brienne and Clegane followed, guarding their backs. Asha smiled as she walked back into the castle,